Dr. De Bono, you've been a tremendous inspiration of mine. You told me over lunch you've been considered to be one of 150 of humanity's most influential people.
That's what I was told, yes.
Would you be kind enough to tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what you've done?
Well, what I've done is pay some attention to thinking. It's extraordinary that over the years, over the centuries, we've paid so very little attention to thinking, and we're continuing to use thinking designed by what I call the Gang of Three in Greece, Aristotle, Socrates, Plato. And in a way, we haven't gone very much further than a caveman's type of thinking. A caveman came out of his cave and he saw a red thing in the bushes, and his thinking is, what is this? Is this an apple that's good to eat? Is it something poisonous? Is it something I don't know about? In other words, recognition and judgment. Or a doctor in a clinic, and a patient comes in, the doctor takes the history, examines the patient, does some tests. What's he looking for? He's looking for a standard situation to which he can apply standard treatment. And that's very much our thinking, 100% at school and probably 90% thereafter. So it's excellent, but not enough. So we have done very, very little about thinking. So that's been my area, looking at thinking, looking at the logic of creativity, which is a logical patterning system. That's what lateral thinking is all about. So one afternoon, for example, in South Africa, a workshop for a steel company, using one of my tools of lateral thinking, generated 21,000 new ideas in one afternoon. That's a lot of creativity.
And so, with that in mind, how important would you say it was to dedicate time to thinking?
I think we should definitely dedicate more time to thinking, because without that, all we're looking for is the standard solution, the routine approach to something, which is good, nothing wrong with that, but it's not enough. That's why 2 or 3 years ago, I invented the word EBNE, E-B-N-E, meaning excellent, but not enough. Now, the reason we have needed that word for 2,500 years, but never designed it, is that if we're looking only at truth, then you can't be more true than the truth. But if you're looking at any sort of action, something may be good, but not good enough.
Because arguably our thinking has supported us quite well till now.
Our thinking is exactly that. It's excellent, but not enough. Yes.
And you coined both the terms parallel thinking and lateral thinking.
Yes. Lateral thinking comes from really looking at patterning systems and moving across patterns to reach a new point. And parallel thinking means where people involved in a group are thinking at any moment in the same direction, not against each other, parallel. And the 6 hats is the way of doing that.
And does that improve collaboration, or what are the benefits?
It not only improves collaboration, it makes meetings very much shorter. I think J.P. Morgan found it reduced their meetings to 1/10 using the 6 hats. Juries in New York using the 6 hats reach unanimous decisions very quickly. The judges were so impressed that I'm told in at least 3 states now the judge can order that the juries use 6 hats.
And why does this parallel thinking method work? I mean, is our critical thinking not good enough? Or?
No, critical thinking is negative, essentially. It's about attack, it's about ego, and you don't really develop any new ideas. There's no design, you don't develop better ideas. So it's very, very limited. As a way of exploring a subject, it's extremely limited, and it's amazing that we've been satisfied with it for 2,400 years.
We've got stuck accepting it as opposed to challenging it.
Because there was nothing else instead, you see.
And so a lot of what you talk about provokes us into thinking about thinking.
Well, we need to think about thinking because we've done so little about it. For instance, if you say to someone, what is the most significant behavior of the human brain, not many people will give you the right answer, which is humor. Humor is significant because humor indicates a patterning system, and all patterning systems are asymmetric, meaning you can go from A to B, you can go from C to A, but not from A to C. And in humor, you go along the main track, then you're taken to the other point, and hindsight is absolutely logical. So if the brain makes patterns, creativity is an absolute necessity.
To break into challenging these patterns?
Well, by moving across to a point which once you get there, in hindsight you say, yes, that's so obvious. But you only see that once you get there.
And so at the birth of that idea, there's people sometimes think that the people who've had the idea are a little bit crazy or mad even. What do you have to say about that?
The answer is that sometimes that's true. But if you were to use some of the tools of lateral thinking, then you can have lots of ideas without having to be crazy.
And go through the process, I assume, of valuing them. I know a lot of your research at the moment is looking at the valuing of ideas.
Yes, well, and the creation of value.
The creation of value.
Creating value, because what happened in the Middle Ages when the church ran schools, universities, and thinking, the church was interested in thinking to find the truth, to prove heretics wrong, and to support the belief structure. So we developed excellent thinking for finding the truth, which eventually became science and very good, but we never culturally developed thinking for creating value. Individuals have entrepreneurs, inventors, innovators, but culturally nothing.
So it's important that we engage both with the critical thinking and creative thinking almost simultaneously.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
So the big question we're asking as part of the global brainstorm is, what do entrepreneurs need to know in order to succeed?
What do they need to know? They need to know from people like you what are some of the difficulties going to be encountered and what are some of the ways and attitudes needed to overcome them. These are practical matters which they need to know. Then in terms of generating ideas, clearly they can learn some of the tools of lateral thinking and other things like that. So there's two aspects to it. One is to have the idea, and the other is to know how to do something about it.
How to take the action to make it happen.
Yes, how to make it happen, exactly.
And what key characteristics do you think successful entrepreneurs need?
Well, they need a lot of motivation. They need a lot of will to succeed. They need to be obstinate and keep going. And they need to be flexible as well to change if one approach doesn't work, then maybe develop another approach.
Which actually leads me nicely into my next question about decisions. You've spoken about decisions as being quite black or white, and perhaps we need to look at another way. Would you elaborate a little bit on
decisions, I mean, obviously you can look at a range of options and then explore the options. And at first some of the options may seem unlikely or far-fetched. But nevertheless, you explore them and you see where it takes you. So, in other words, we don't just move in terms of right and wrong. You must also develop the judgment of interesting. This is interesting. This has potential. Let's pursue it.
And use that by means of furthering your thoughts.
Keep going, yes.
Fantastic. So to people who don't necessarily believe that they're capable of thinking in a creative way, what would you say to them?
I would say you certainly can, and if you learn some of the processes, you find that you do. And it's the willingness to accept ideas, the willingness to accept an idea which isn't quite right, but to get movement out of it, to move on from it to other ideas and better ideas and so on. Keep going.
So it's very much a skill that can be learned.
It's a skill that definitely can be learned, yes.
We don't have to necessarily be born geniuses.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not, no. I remember, I think I told you before the story of this man, a businessman who picked up one of my books when a plane stopped at an airport. He said he kept it in his briefcase for 30 years or 33 years. He said at that time he had $3 in his pocket, and today he has $3 billion in his pocket, and he said that's 80% due to your book. So that's someone who obviously used these things. Now, to be fair, I think what may have happened with someone like that is that he was inclined to think that way, and reading my book gave him confidence that this was perfectly okay.
And how can we use these skills to collaborate better with each other?
Well, to obviously explore options, ways of collaborating, different points to collaborate, and so on. Yes, points which are not necessarily competitive against each other. Yes. And
if we were to look at finding a competitive edge in an increasingly competitive economy, or starting a new business in such a climate, do such skills support?
Well, either you do what other people are doing in a better way or a cheaper way, or you do what other people are doing with added value. Those are the two options, really. I believe not enough time is spent thinking. Enough time is spent problem solving and trying to find out what the routine way of doing something is, not saying, well, how can we do this differently? Because a lot of adequate ideas are adequate, but if you challenge them, you can turn up a much better idea.
And hopefully that's what we'll be doing with the Global Brainstorm today.
Hopefully, yes.
Do you have any words of wisdom or advice to anyone who's sat here right now, perhaps feeling a little bit unsure about entering into a thinking process they've not engaged with before, or
well, I think to be very sensitive to value, and to have an idea and perceive some value in it, and then develop that idea, move on from it, and develop it into something practical.
Fantastic. Is there a question I perhaps haven't asked you that you would like to have been asked?
No, I think it's a matter of keeping going, and having confidence and keeping going, and trying different things. If one thing doesn't work, try another.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome everybody, welcome to the Global Brainstorm. Thank you so much for coming and joining me. This is going to be a really exciting couple of hours together where we talk to some pretty amazing people at the forefront of innovation and business startup, where we're really engaged with you and your unique brain as we're brainstorming together. So my name's Celia Gates. I'm the person behind the vision of the Global Brainstorm as such. I would like to see us all thinking more creatively, thinking more critically, using our brains to more of their amazing ability, because up until now, we've really not been thinking quite as intelligently as I believe that we can. So that's really what we're doing today. We're setting aside some time to actually think about thinking. So it's about action learning, and it's about really getting into this. Not just sitting here and listening to me and some of the other speakers waffle on at you for the next hour and a couple of hours or so, but putting out a pen and paper and being prepared to take some action yourself during this time to develop your businesses. So it is about embracing the fact that you're cleverer than you currently believe and looking at how you can tap into some of this potential that's hidden in your head. The first thing I have to say about this event is it's not a secret. It is open and it's here for sharing. There are plenty of social share buttons around the page. You'll see across the top you can share with your network, with your friends. And the reason being is that the more brains that we can bring into this, the more we can actually start to tap into each other's brain power. It might sound a little bit crazy, but we'll go into more details about that later. What you do really need to hand is a pen and paper so that you can start to sketch out some of your thoughts and ideas, and we'll be hearing a little bit later about how one of the best ways to actually do that is. The idea of this is to really bring to the table those inherent fears so that we can start to generate some new ideas. Now, inherent fears tend to be the things that hold us back, and actually it's just a question about being honest with yourself in terms of what is it that's actually blocking you? Where are you stuck? What's stopping you from making that next step towards achieving the success that you deserve? When we look at this, it's quite easy to step out of our own comfort zones, or indeed to cushion ourselves within them, so that we don't necessarily even accept an honest vision of what's going on around us ourselves. And that's really what we're looking at. So I'm not going to waffle on at you anymore. Let's introduce some of the people that we've got in the room here today. Tony Fish is joining us here today, and Tony, I want to thank you very much for inviting us along to the Innovation Warehouse. Tony, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do and what the Innovation Warehouse, this beautiful building that you can see behind me, what goes on here, and then perhaps I'll ask you to explain to our audience a little bit about what an absolute truth actually is.
Thank you, Celia. So yes, hello, I'm Tony Fish for those on the rest of the world. Innovation Warehouse is a pretty simple principle, which is what we're trying to do is find innovative businesses and then give them a place to call home but not just a place to call home, a place where actually they can grow in a safe environment, but however it's a safe while they carry on growing. If they stop growing and stop achieving, it's pretty brutal, and that's the end of the road. So why companies achieve, they make progress, they're delighted to stay here, we host them, find ways of getting them funded, find channels to market, and try and create somewhere in London for innovation.
Fantastic. That sounds absolutely great. And I mean, that's exactly what innovation really needs, is a hub in which to develop, isn't it? I'm going to ask Gemma to introduce herself to everybody here.
Okay, well, hello everybody. My name is Gemma Thompson and my company is Social Media Illumination. So you might guess from that I do social media stuff. And I do. I help people figure out the strategy that they need for their particular business to use Facebook, Twitter, Google+, LinkedIn, all of those others to actually make contact with customers.
Fantastic. And I mean, in this day and age, that's exactly what needs to happen more, really, leveraging these networks, these limited resources that are available to the maximum advantage.
Absolutely.
And I guess that's what we're looking at doing now, is bringing brains together to start generating some new ideas. Mark Ortman, why don't you introduce yourself to us here?
Hello, my name is Mark Ortman. I am the founder of IdeaSpaceGlobal.org, and happy to be part of this as this is Global Entrepreneurship Week, as many of you know. And as you know, there are now 131 countries doing all sorts of things just like this all around the world. IdeaSpace Global is aiming at trying to create a 24/7 platform for entrepreneurs, providing everything they need in terms of a knowledge base and a workplace and tools to be able to take their ideas from aspiration to enterprise.
From aspiration to enterprise, I like that. So aspiration, what's that, the idea, or?
Having an idea, deciding to be an entrepreneur, deciding to go with, not to take a job, to make a job, and decide to follow your heart. You may have a particular idea of business, you want to take it further, keeping in mind that pretty much every entrepreneur has done this before, so it's very much the case of having to learn. And one of the things that we're hoping to provide those learning materials to make it a much easier and more successful journey from aspiration to enterprise.
And actually, that's the perfect prompt to take us over to Gemma. And Gemma, who's the person sitting next to you? Will you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Martin Hayler, personal trainer. I did one of Celia's courses, and just now in the process of trying to get my own business up and running. Found a little bit of a niche in the market, and just here to sort of like say that anybody can do this. I haven't made it a success at the moment, but hopefully we'll get there.
That's exactly right. It's about approaching it with the attitude that says that you will get there. Gemma, what do you have to say about that?
Well, I think it's much easier in this day and age to set up and really bootstrap a business. There are so many tools that you can use to communicate with your customers without having a huge advertising and marketing budget. That it just breaks down the walls. It's much more of a level playing field. So you're going to be okay. You can do it.
Yeah.
So actually part of the problem seems to be having that idea in the first place, having the vision that takes you forward. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to be looking at generating some of these ideas, whether it be that you're in a situation where you've got an existing business and you're looking at taking it forward to the next step, or whether it actually be that you're wondering what on earth to do with your life and you're looking at creating some ideas that will support you with the rest of your future, or indeed whether you're actually at that point where the business is going really well or has been established for a number of years, but you're struggling to find that competitive edge that's going to give you that lead in the market. And that's where innovation really can set you up to be the leader of your industry. And as a leader, as an individual, it's always important that we're the ones capable of generating these new ideas. So that's really what we're going to look at. We're going to look at generating some ideas. Now I'm going to take us over to Liam Hughes. Liam, you're very much into this generating ideas yourself, and you have a pretty amazing site out there. Why don't you tell people about it and introduce yourself?
That's good. Yes, so my name is Liam, and I am the founder of a website called biggerplate.com. Biggerplate is one of the, if not the sort of largest sources of mind mapping content and community in the world. It's a free resource where people have shared their mind maps that they've created, and often those mind maps are their ideas for their businesses or their plans for social media, and lots of templates and examples. And it's a global community, and within that community are a lot of entrepreneurs. So it's a very nice thing to be a part of, to see how others are using tools to drive innovation and that sort of thing.
Because actually, these mind maps, now we might take them for second nature. We've got just behind you that we can just see him in your shot there. Andrew Wilcox, who's our mind mapping guru, who is busy drawing up a mind map of the conversation that we're currently having. Andrew, we can see your mind map. I might just bring it up large. Perhaps you'll unmute your microphone and tell us a little bit about yourself and about mind maps, what mind maps can be used for, how they might benefit business.
Hello, my name's Andrew Wilcox. My business is called Cabaret, and I have a brand with it that called Conference Reaction, which maps events like these. Go in the middle. Well, do you want me to talk about that now?
Yes,
mind mapping big benefit. How does mind mapping benefit big business? Well, there's lots of big businesses use it. You know, one of the major software vendors in this area, Mindjet, says that they're in all 500 of the Fortune 500 companies. But what I've mapped out here on the screen, which I think you can see now in front of you, yes. The major areas that I've seen it being exploited, it's exploited for management. So using it to manage your projects, that's one of the biggest areas. People use it to manage their people and their products. And the management role it takes is creating dashboards about taking you to information that exists in the business or outside of the business, for developing strategy and tactics, being very visual with it, enabling people to brainstorm like we're doing here today. We'd also see people using it in very creative areas, creating new products, creating the vision for their business, and for analysing things when disasters happen. It's a great tool for capturing all the information from both individuals, from phone calls, from emails, from things you find on a TV, on the web, and getting a big picture of what the disaster is all about.
Fantastic. This mind mapping thing really is a useful skill, especially in terms of looking at some of these big projects, which, you know what it's like, it can sometimes be overwhelming. There's so much to think about, so much to do, it's impossible to see the wood from the tree. And mind mapping, breaking it all down so it's there in front of you, allows you to almost step back from your thoughts a little bit, enough to be able to observe them and then to make some pretty good judgments based on that. Now, Liam, you were going to tell people how to draw a mind map. What's the key thing to drawing a mind map, really?
Well, I think the point you just made about wood from the trees is a really important one. Andrew, I think, would probably say the same thing, which is that the map gives you a really good way of seeing a big picture very easily, but also it enables you to drill right down into the detail. Andrew's map that he's creating now is a good example of that. But in drawing a mind map, whether you're doing it by hand or with a computer, you sort of want to try and begin with a particular purpose in mind. Starting in the middle is where you sort of put your key idea that you're going to explore, or the thing you're going to do some planning for. And your first level, if you like, of topics off that are maybe your key headings that you're then going to build out from. So depending on what you're looking to do, those topics could expand out a long way, or they might just go a few topics deep. So it sort of depends what you're using it for, really.
So really it's a question about allowing those associated thoughts to sort of flow quite freely from your mind, would you say, Liam?
Yeah, absolutely. You want to really sort of, the great thing about the map is it's a really good way of harnessing all those random associations and connections that the brain makes, but it may not be able to necessarily make sense of. So to have a tool and a process that helps you get all those down and then make sense of them is very, very powerful, other than trying to just do it all in your head or scribbling curious notes.
So we're getting the idea of these mind maps. And let's just have a quick check of Andrew's mind map as he's building up this global brainstorm. Goodness, this map is going to end up being absolutely huge. And given the fact that you're sat at home now thinking about your own individual business or where you're going to take the situation that you're in, perhaps you can start to build your mind map up too. So in the way that Andrew there has got the global brainstorm in the centre of his mind map, take Liam's advice now and really summarise what it is that you want to specifically concentrate on thinking about, whether that's your new project, whether that's an innovation, whether that's your life in general, whatever it is that you're thinking about. Put that in the centre of the page and draw a circle and oval around it. And do get ready to start building these mind maps up as we run through this process together. And actually, now that we've got them in the room, I'm going to take us over to Brigitte and Ken Kramer over here. And I'm going to ask Brigitte to quickly introduce herself.
Okay. So first of all, hi, my name is Brigitte Sander, and I was actually born in an entrepreneurial family. My baby crib was in a warehouse or the warehouse part of our business. So entrepreneurship is very close to my heart. And all my clients, I'm an executive coach, and I work in a company called Turnaround Coaching and Consultancy. And what that means is that I really help entrepreneurs to not only build their business, but also to keep their life, because very often it's one or the other. And what's important for me is, having grown up in a family like that, is that all of you keep the sanity, the balance, the happiness, the health, and etc., etc. So that's where I come from.
But very much there's no point in being in a situation unless you're fully functioning to the best of your ability. And it can be quite easy, can't it, to set yourself up with the wrong vision for your future to the point where things aren't as aligned as they can be. With mind mapping, one of the benefits that I see mind mapping as being is this ability to slow our thoughts right down to the point where we can actually see them. And often when I'm explaining this to other people, I use a specific example. And it just so happens that we happen to have the inventor of the technology of the example I use pretty much in the room to an extent. So when there's huge amounts of data, which is effectively what's happening when you're creating ideas, building businesses, developing inventions, it's quite hard to make that data audible. Thoughts whiz in and out of our heads all over the place, and it's difficult to focus on what actually we should be listening to and what we should be ignoring as just peripheral noise. Now you'll know this if you've ever picked up a phone that's actually a fax calling you from the other end. You get that very high-pitched squeal down the phone. And a fax machine needs to be able to slow that volume of data down to the point of making it audible. And that's really what we're doing with mind maps. We're writing our thoughts down to the point of being able to step back and actually listen to what we're saying ourselves. So with that in mind, I'm not going to tell you what his invention actually was, but Kane, if you are there, perhaps you could introduce yourself. You're involved in the innovation world to a large extent.
I certainly am, Celia, and right now I'm knee deep in it because I'm not sure if you can see me in the conversation. Can you?
Perhaps you could jump in next to Tony for 2 minutes and have a little. Oh, he's leaving you with a ready-made moustache in place. We are, of course, celebrating Movember. Gemma, where's your moustache gone? Get it back on. You're doing so brilliantly.
It's a moving target, that moustache. It's like flying around the room.
Now, Kane, you're behind a big red circle there.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
I just managed to...
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're involved in?
I've got it. It seems to be following me about. Is it doing face recognition or something? I'll wear a T-shirt with a face on it next time. Sorry, dodge the technology. So my name is Kane. I'm an inventor, and I'm organiser of the British Invention Show and British Invention of the Year Awards, which I've been doing for 12 years. I've been a sort of creative, innovative person from a very, very young age, and really from as soon as I could sort of work out what electricity was in the wool, which was probably at 7 or 8 years old, was the first time I was sort of blowing the street out with my experiments. And sort of carried on to blowing myself up lots of times. I'm a very, very inquisitive person. I want to know how everything works, so I have a constant challenge which I could never obviously keep up with. I believe that innovation and technology really drives economy, it drives progress, and it drives and underpins the quality of lifestyle that we're able to have today. And I'm very delighted to be here today at the Global Brainstorm, and looking forward to the ensuing conversation. And that's it from me. Moustache.
So whilst Kane wrestles with his moustache that Tony has left him with, Kane, what are some of the challenges that you see small business owners, inventors, innovators face when they first start out with whatever their idea might be?
Well, amongst them, and probably sometimes is a good thing, is just fear itself. Fear of the unknown. You know, you've got a new idea. It's not so common that that idea is always from somebody who's already working within that marketplace. So it might be an idea outside of their existing area. And at that point, the challenge that they could have could be anything between actually being very experienced and knowing their marketplace. And as is more common with most of the inventors that come through the British Inventors Society in the early stages, they've got a brilliant idea and don't know how to evaluate their idea, don't know how to protect their idea, and then the other problems are sort of associated with marketing it, producing prototypes. So this moustache is just killing me. It's the first time. No, it's fine. I mean, I say it's fine. I mean, this could make 3 ex-wives, this moustache. I'm just going to check.
I'd say the challenge is
I haven't asked the next one, but I'm just planning ahead, which is, you know, you do that when you're in this game.
The challenges are varied and vast, is what you're saying, including dodging a moustache.
You know, for a lot of people who are having a new idea in a completely unknown field to them, it's a bit like being blindfolded in a tunnel in the dark, you know. So at that point, they're very vulnerable as well to all sorts of shocks and spivs. You know, people that walk around with this moustache like that.
And take advantage of
I mean, it was quite common. It's not quite as much now, but there was a point that we would have as many as one person a week call through to the society, having sort of been drawn into some kind of invention, promotion, association, or business, marketing business. And they usually find out that things are really dodgy when they get to about £16,000 worth of expenditure, and nothing's happened. But that's, you know, not quite as common now. The challenges are endless, and I think one of the most difficult things and one of the most important things is to link up with the right people really early on and get good advice and listen to their advice.
Yeah. Liam, what would you say some of the challenges were that entrepreneurs faced?
Well, I'd agree with some of what Kane said there in numerous aspects. One is there's the fear around knowing the market if you're not familiar with it when you have the idea. I didn't really know the market I was trying to create my business in, but I sort of did what Kane is suggesting, which is go out and find good people and link up with them. For example, Andrew, very early on, was a good person in the mapping world who knew a lot more than I did. So I found him as a good example of someone to collaborate with. I think that idea of the fear of the unknown is an important thing to consider. But I think if an entrepreneur focuses on the end goal and the sort of vision of what they want to create, that can take away some of the fear. I sort of tend to refer to the entrepreneur more as the architect than as the builder. You wouldn't start constructing a building until you've seen a very clear picture of what the end result is going to look like. The entrepreneur's job is to come up with that picture and then start to do the building work. It's not to just start doing stuff, otherwise you end up in a bit of a mess. So I think you can take out some of that fear by doing some of what Kane said, which is knowing your market, finding people who know the market if you don't, and just, again, being slightly wary of people who might give you bad advice. It's quite interesting having a social media expert here, because social media is a great example of where there have been a lot of people popping up as consultants for social media who will charge silly money to do what I'm sure Gemma would say is things that can be done for no money. So it's an interesting sort of mix of expertise, if you like.
So let's hear from Gemma on that one. Gemma, what do you have to say? What do you see some of the challenges that entrepreneurs face as being?
I definitely agree with the fear of failure, but I would also bring in the fear of success. That's something that can be quite scary for people as well. A lot of female entrepreneurs are kind of crippled by that, because they think if I get too successful, I'll never see my family. So, you do have to find the right balance. And of course, I know Brigitte will be able to talk to us much more about that later. When it comes to finding the right people, I love social media because you can connect with people so easily on there. And as Liam says, you don't need a lot of money to do that. You do need a bit of time, and it's important to use the right tools. And one thing that I would stress, particularly for checking out people's credentials, is using LinkedIn. LinkedIn's testimonials tool is fantastic. You can't game it. So if somebody writes a recommendation, that's the one that goes up. The person that receives it can't rewrite it to make it suit them any better. So, things like that are really good. You've also got all kinds of review sites to find things out about people. And you can get in touch with previous customers. You can tweet them and ask confidentially what you thought of their business. So why not? Why not use that resource? That's what it's there for.
Absolutely, and it's exactly those sorts of resources, and obviously when they're free we love them even more, that we're really trying to bring to the surface. And one of the strongest resources is actually the people that we're connected to. Mark, you're working very closely on all of this. What do you see some of the challenges that entrepreneurs face as being? And what is it that you're actually doing at Idea Space Global, through the Global Entrepreneurship Week committees, the organisations that work together as partners? How is this information being brought forward for people to benefit from?
So there are certain real challenges that have existed for many, forever really, in starting a business. I think that the good news is that we understand how to deal with those risks, how to recognise them, how to optimize a startup's chances of succeeding. One of the great things with Global Entrepreneurship Week is it's really brought together a lot of the separate efforts that have taken place originally by governments, traditionally, or by industry, or by education, and taken those silos and brought them together in many ways. And in that case, that's really given them an opportunity to coordinate a lot of their activities. And there's also some degree of education, if you like, going on, where sharing of that knowledge between all of those stakeholders has helped provide a much more enlightened picture to how to help entrepreneurs practically. So I think it's one of the great achievements that Global Entrepreneurship Week has managed is, over a short period of only 5 years, now 131 countries are sharing information and sharing ideas and sharing ways of really creating very effective methods of people starting up in business. And that sharing of that knowledge is what's going to make the difference. There's a huge failure rate that happens for startups, and some say it's 80%. Many of those are self-inflicted through lack of knowledge as to, for instance, just very basic things like managing cash flow, making sure you've got the right team, running business disciplines. So you can have a fantastic idea, you can have a market, you can be able to market it at a great price, but if you haven't got some of those fundamentals of business in place and understand how they all work, then there is some risk that your enterprise will fail. So making sure that some of those things are addressed early on, if you like, knowing where the bodies are buried, is going to really make a difference. And if we can increase the success rate, we can really get people achieving a longer lifespan for those startups, then we're going to see that create more jobs, we're going to see that deliver to the economy, benefits of further growth, and help, particularly at this stage, it's critical. We have a worldwide recession, and entrepreneurs are really making a difference. If you look at the US, the Carbon Foundation has done a lot of research into this, and net gains for the economy are all coming from the startup community. That's where the jobs are coming from, that's where the new contribution, if you like, to the national production and wealth is coming from. So entrepreneurs are really, really critical to building the economy back to where we would like them to a more balanced and sustainable state.
Fantastic, absolutely, you're spot on. It is, entrepreneurship, innovation. Innovation might have got us into this mess in the first place, but innovation is certainly going to be responsible for getting us out of it. Tony, here at the Innovation Warehouse. But Tony, you get involved in a lot of small businesses right in their early days. We do know the statistics are high. Mark's just quoted it, that being 80%. I've had in my head a figure of 96% of all new businesses, startups, fail within the first 10 years or no longer exist within 10 years, whether that be because they've been bought out, whether that be because they've had other exit strategies that mean that they're no longer registered with Companies House or whatever that might be. Whatever that statistic actually is, whatever the numbers are, the truth remains that it's actually quite a challenge bringing a business to, making a business successful, growing a business. Tony, why don't you tell us about some of the things that you see on a daily basis? What are the challenges that small business owners have to actually look at in order to become successful?
I actually don't know where to start. It's such a monstrously big question, and it's so dependent upon the sector, and it's so dependent upon the person and the ideas. I'll go for a couple of things. One is no companies that fail. People try things. For whatever reason, they don't actually end up with enough income to cover the costs. So it doesn't make it a failure. It means that some people's judgment goes that they don't really like it. So what? So this idea that 97% of companies fail, I'm not convinced about. Life is a process of iteration. And as you go through, you iterate, and you might not start with the best idea, but you certainly will iterate. And I often, if you go back and we draw these maps about the acceleration of human endeavour, and quite often we start with this thing called the Earth, the planet, 3.5 billion years ago, and then a few dinosaurs, and then eventually a few humans, and we reach the end of it, we've got all these great exponential curves going up and saying how fast everything's happening. But what we've kind of done is gone from biology to technology, and we're not actually drawing on the same things. We as humans still don't actually transform ourselves every couple of years. I haven't seen anybody walking along the Earth at the moment with 3 eyes, because we needed a 3rd one, or 4 arms, or actually a couple of extra thumbs because we're using them. So we've got to stick with biology and technology as completely different things, and therefore the human iterates at quite a slow rate. Biology iterates at quite a slow rate, and we therefore kind of like want technology to iterate at a different rate. And we quite haven't managed to get our brain around that they're actually doing different things to different people at different times. So businesses iterate, people iterate, and we've got to get into actually its iteration cycle. There isn't failure after one iteration. What you do is you iterate again. I think it's sad, and I'd like to see the statistic which says people only do one and they give up, because to me that is failure. Okay, yeah. People who do it again and again and again and again, they've never failed, because actually they're iterating, and iteration is far more important than saying, "Ooh, this number of stats failed." That's my personal view.
No, thank you very much for clarifying that, because that's you're absolutely spot on. It is all about this learning, progression, evolution, development, taking things to the next level and getting something out of it and accepting that there's learning in things that don't necessarily deliver the result that you intended for them to do at the beginning. I've actually got a question here that's come out of the chat from Rachel. Rachel, I'm assuming you'd perhaps like to ask Kane Kramer this question. So if everybody else could switch their microphones off, and if Kane could switch his microphone on. Rachel wants to know about how you can create a balance between building a community and actually protecting your ideas in the process.
Balance between building the community and protecting your ideas.
Building a supportive community around you, people you can share your ideas with, and protecting your intellectual property.
Okay. Well, the first most obvious way initially would be obviously to do non-disclosure agreements, confidentiality agreements with the people that you want to talk to initially. But I would just mention that when you talk generally about communities, if you were, for example, to meet with a group of 50 people and issue a non-confidential, an NDA or confidentiality agreement with all 50 of those people, and then the following week you went and you did it with another 50 people, you really would be going outside of what would really be deemed as confidential. You know, you're now broadcasting it to huge groups of people. So in fact, those confidentiality agreements could be voided. You know, there's a sort of a thought that if you go to if you've got a product and there are 10 major players in that field, for example, representing 90% of the market, that if you go one by one and you do a confidentiality agreement with each one, sooner or later, none of them will be able to make it without going around you. And that's certainly true of a few of those, but there becomes a point that when actually you shared it with 90% of the marketplace, and it could hardly be deemed at that point to have validity in its confidentiality. So you do get situations and scenarios in clubs and small groups where people meet and they have a non-disclosure agreement which they sign between them. You know, I'm not aware of any cases being specifically challenged as a result of confidentiality considering to have been breached. But then I'm not also aware of any cases where maybe more than a few hundred million has been at stake, and that's usually a catalyst to drive, you know, reasons to actually, you know, engage in what the strength of the confidentiality was before they applied for their intellectual property.
Yeah.
Now, just to finally say, you of course could apply for a patent or registered design rights, and then you can blab about it till you're green, and so's everybody else.
And one of the things that I always say to people is, rather than actually sharing your idea, Rachel, when you're building this community of people around you, share the problem that you're solving. Talk to people about the problems that they face. Don't talk to them about your solution. Talk to them about the problems. Understand those problems in more detail. I do know that I have got somebody here in the room who probably can give us a fantastic answer with this. I'm just going to pass over to Tony Fish, who's going to tell us a little bit about his thoughts on this question.
Thanks, Celia. So I probably come from a different direction on some of this, and my opinion is, actually, let's use a bit of facial hair if we possibly can, if it comes up on the screen. I'm hoping it might appear if I'm really lucky. Where I come from on some of this is that when we start with an idea, we don't actually know where the idea is going to end up. And having started with an idea, and I've now got a nice little thingy goatee beard, and that's rather nice, and that was, oh, it's gone again. It keeps coming and going. I have an idea, and if I share my, if we share my idea, when I share my idea, it's at that point I share the idea with whomever. And anybody could take that idea and they could steal it. And I'm actually delighted anyone can steal it, because what they're not on is the same journey as me. And because they're not on the same journey as me, actually, it doesn't really matter. And you know, it's a bit like going from a pen, which everybody thinks they want, and I suddenly invent a pen. But the reality is, I'm on a pen because I started off with a pencil, and I got from a pencil and I got to a pen. But actually, when I end up, is I'm going to find that actually the world wanted a cup. Now, if I shared with everybody it's the pen, so you go and steal my idea, you go and make a pen. Okay, you could make the best pen ever, but that's not what I wanted to do or what the market wanted. And actually, you've got to follow your own journey. You've got to follow your own path and go through that process rather than getting so protected about your idea being the ultimate idea. And I agree with what you said. It's about actually saying what the problem is. Okay, and actually, you may not have the best answer to the problem, and by sharing with people, and humans, we are a natural species who love to share. So the less you share, actually you're not telling somebody about the problem you're solving. So if you don't tell anybody, you won't have any customers. So you're kind of like self-defeating the whole objective that you're trying to meet. You're trying to build buy-in to what you're trying to do. Share it as widely as you possibly can, as many people as you possibly can, and get their engagement, because that way you're going to end up with a problem in the marketplace.
And thank you, because that leads us on to a beautiful prompt. You've got the share button above this video here. Sharing is caring in my book. Gemma, what you do is all about sharing information, show social networking, being connected. How does that actually support the growth of your business? Why is it important that people do start making these connections through sharing information?
Well, social media is very much about finding like-minded people, and the way that you find people that share your interests and have the same point of view as you is by telling people what your point of view is, and then by other friends connecting you. In fact, Celia, we met through a mutual friend that said, you girls need to get together, you'd get on really well, and she collected a whole group of us together. And that has grown and grown, and we did an awful lot of great work with that. In fact, I would say probably around 75% of the people that I know, I actually met online first. And we met online first because we had similar interests. Now, different social sites have different accessibility. And to come back to that question on privacy a little bit, you can keep things as private as you like online as well, if you know how to use your settings. But some platforms are very much made for sharing. Twitter is all about sharing. That's what it's there for. Facebook, you share maybe a little bit less, but you share higher quality information. So I might share 10 things on Twitter in a day, but I'd only share 2 or 3 on Facebook. But it's the type of things you share, and they can make your connections much deeper. And when you have that deep connection, you're not afraid to ask for advice, you're not afraid to ask for information, and you're happy to be connected to somebody that somebody else recommends you to.
Liam, you're also sharing lots of mind maps on Bigger Plate. How do people respond when they kind of see this? I'm always amazed at quite how many people see a mind map if I upload one to your site. You're obviously doing some pretty tremendous sharing there. Do you want to talk about the transfer of knowledge that happens through that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really satisfying, but it's not always been like that. You know, it started off very slowly. Getting people to upload content was like pulling teeth. So it sort of goes back to what was said earlier about it being an iterative process. You realise when nothing's happening what you're not quite doing right, and you have to keep working at it. We're now at a situation where there is a huge amount of sharing going on. It's a real niche area we work in. But within that niche, we are now getting to a sort of almost a little bit of a tipping point around people's willingness to share content. Very much aligned with what Gemma says is we've never spent any money on marketing, ever. It's all been done through Twitter, through Facebook, through LinkedIn. And exactly as Gemma says, we've not just gone in there and just been a bit haphazard with it, although we were in the early days. We've got more and more strategic about how we use each channel, what content we're sharing in each one, and what sort of relationships we're trying to build in each one of those networks. And then to also go back to the discussion around sharing your idea, at what stage it's okay to do that, and the concerns around that. I think people are more paranoid about theft of ideas than they should be. I think people overrate their own ideas a bit too much. And actually, I completely agree with what was said earlier. If you share your idea with some people, they will make your idea better. That's probably the biggest thing I have got out of things like LinkedIn, by asking communities, okay, we've done this, it's not quite working, what would you do better? And you'd be amazed at the response you get. I think you'd be very surprised if somebody did actually steal your idea. And if you've got a good enough idea and you've worked on it enough, you sort of give yourself a head start anyway. I think you just have to take a bit of a leap of faith with people. I think the days of patenting everything and protecting every idea at every stage is a little bit old-fashioned now, actually, and you sort of just have to put stuff out there and iterate quickly. So just to loop back around on that.
Kane, I should perhaps let you respond to that. There's obviously this whole collaboration, open source, nature transfer of ideas happening. Would you agree or disagree with what you've just heard?
A bit of a combination, really. It's very much a case of horses for courses. Sometimes it's really relevant and really pertinent to register or to protect it with a patent, because there might be longevity in it, it might be a new science. For example, one product that was a winner of the British Invention of the Year Awards 4 years ago now has, it's now turning over almost $1 billion US, having had $200 million worth of investment from the Malaysian government. Now, I absolutely know for a fact that the Malaysian government would not back that product, knowing that Aspen Aerogel, a joint venture company, which was set up with NASA in 2001, were already doing nearly $1 billion a year with a product which was made out of silica, which was derived from sand. And this other product is derived from rice husks and costs 20% to make, and the patents on those are worth billions. So it really depends what it is, but there are other products which, I would entirely agree with, that people do get a little bit bogged down. Sometimes with IP and intellectual property, patenting products worldwide where they've only got perhaps a route to market in 1 or 2 countries is very common. And certainly, in my early days, I made those same sort of mistakes. So it is really a case of horses and courses. But the last time I personally was actually working and looking at registering something of mine, which happened to be design registration, was yesterday. And I'll be making a design application on Monday. And I'm pretty certain, or I have a very strong feeling or an expectancy, that my designs might actually be copied. And, and I'm an individual who has good reason to feel that. And I know a lot of other people who've had their products copied as well. So it does sort of, in fact, when I stop and think about it, actually, products that I've produced have been copied, gone back years, and that includes everything from 30 years ago producing TV specials, where people would just, manufacture the video cassettes and just copy my product, right the way through to, digital audio player, and my designs for that, which were very, very, very heavily copied, 300 million units.
How many units?
300 million units.
300 million units. Yeah, well, I think you did invent the fastest selling piece of electrical equipment of all times at the time it was selling.
The digital audio player.
The digital audio player. Kane's the inventor of the original iPod, the MP3 technology, and yes.
Music downloading, that was a clever bit.
And music downloading. In fact, I believe, Kane, you had a patent in 1979 or 1980 or something for the transfer of music and data via a phone line, didn't you?
That's right. I came up with the idea in 1979, and I applied for the first patents in 1981. And the basis of the system actually was a music downloading system that downloaded down telephone lines that enabled anybody with access to a computer to be able to download it onto their device. And I had the world patents for that. As Phillips got me embroiled in various legal suits, last one being for Apple, where I was a key witness in a $500 million lawsuit. And there was another one actually recently, Christmas, which was a Samsung case, which they contacted me for, which you might know about, has been quite busy in the news. But also, it just goes to show how important, if you've got a piece of technology which actually has huge, enormous worldwide potential, then it's going to be very, very difficult to license that piece of technology to one of the corporate giants, unless you've got some kind of protection from what they'll do is they'll just sort of relieve you of it. Whereas if you've got something which is perhaps a smaller, more modest business which might amount to employing a few staff, or 100 or a few hundreds of thousands a year, even a few tens of millions a year, then maybe that's not the route for you to go down that heavy IP route. Because for me, the patents on the digital audio player, I took them out in 120 countries. And, it was costing me 60 grand a pop, which 30 years ago, even today it's a lot of money, but 30 years ago, you could buy a few detached houses with that. So, it's very prohibitive, the cost of protection, if that expenditure and cost means that it leaves you short of your money for exploitation. My son is a designer, and he's doing sort of designs of T-shirts, and is not really spending any money because he's only going to make a few hundred of each of them. So at the end of the day, he says he will be hugely flattered if everybody goes and copies him. Now, I have a different view about somebody coming and making 100 million units of something that I've designed. I would like, you know, to participate in that. So therefore, the cost of a few €100 to register in Europe, or literally a few tens of pounds to register a design in the United States is quite attractive. And I've got a new range of audio equipment coming out, and I'm going to register those designs just a matter of course, because it'll only cost me a few £100, and quite a few millions of pounds will change hands. And I could be sure that I'll have copies of my units coming out probably with my name on it from China. And so I want to be able to take the best poppers that I can, really, at those people. And so if I can get the law on my side, I will. But certainly don't get too bogged down in it if you don't need to. You know, if you're just running a business in the UK, just make the things and sell them. You know, but if you've got bigger aspirations to roll your product out and licensing it, then it becomes more relevant. I hope I haven't bored you to tears with my extremely long answer there.
No, Rachel, I don't know if that answers your question there.
What question?
We did start with a question there about intellectual property and sharing, and in actual fact, nobody can ever steal your vision. So if your vision exists outside of, you know, the paper clips and pens and pencils and mugs and cups, as Tony was saying, the products, the kind of like little nitty-gritty bits that make up the element of what you're building towards, then your bigger vision will succeed irrelevant of who kind of think they can make a fast buck out of some of those early ideas. So that would be where I was coming from in terms of all of this. Does anyone have anything to add before I move on to where we're talking about entrepreneurs and what entrepreneurs need to know? This is the big question that Global Entrepreneurship Week is asking everybody this week. What do you need to know in order to succeed? And I was fortunate enough to go off to the Global Entrepreneurship Congress in Liverpool, where I had the chance to interview Jonathan Ortman, who's the president of Global Entrepreneurship Week. And I asked him specifically about the challenges that he saw entrepreneurs facing, and more importantly, the challenges that people supporting entrepreneurs were also facing. Because in actual fact, you know, apart from the fact that we've got a lot of people in this room, including myself, who's now looking to work with small business owners and founders and entrepreneurs and innovators to help them to get to that next level, there is a challenge in doing that because we don't always get it right. So let's just move across and see what Jonathan Ortman has to say about really building businesses and the challenges faced by entrepreneurs.
We're really trying to get into the mindset of the entrepreneur, and specifically what challenges face small startup business owners and indeed those supporting startups and businesses as they grow, so that we can understand them and unravel them. I'm sure the Kaufman Foundation has huge insights into this. What are you seeing as being the challenges and problems faced by entrepreneurs?
Well, first of all, Celia, congratulations on the Brainstorm. It's absolutely fantastic. It's aptly labeled here at the Congress, because what we're really trying to do is have a global brainstorm here about just that very question. How do we stimulate the creation of more startup communities of entrepreneurs, and how do we make the path easier for them, certainly in their first 5 years of operation? It's a question that is trying to be answered from the context of, first of all, in terms of policies that create an enabling environment in these countries that allow it, make it easier for people, smooth the path for entrepreneurs to be able to go forward. But it's also one, I think, that's an even more important challenge for the entrepreneurial support community, because for all of us who try to help entrepreneurs, one of the challenges that we face is that the field has exploded. There are so many people in the field, and so now we have to do a better job at sifting through and coming up with evidence-based information and research that allows us to guide more effectively. And so at the Kaufman Foundation, one of the things that's happening is a lot of data collection around this, a lot of measuring around what works, and a lot of experimentation, because with entrepreneurial ecosystems, you can't predict the outcome. You can measure the performance of the interventions you do, but you can't predict the outcomes. So one of the things that I would possibly emphasize is that we've had a little bit too much attention here to the importance of capital. Inevitably now we're in a world where you need less capital to start up, there's been a little bit of a badge of honor by entrepreneurs that I got my first round of money, but maybe they didn't need that. And I think there's also been a real push in the venture capital industry that's really interested, obviously, in being entrepreneurial themselves in terms of actually generating wealth from these new startups. And so I think one of the first things I'd say we have to be able to do is we have to be much smarter about the money game. We have to understand, when do we really need to take money? When should we be more lean? Certainly there's a great book called The Lean Startup. Viewers haven't really read it. The Lean Startup is just fantastic. And one of the things we look at is how we should bootstrap longer. And how that really the creation of this firm is something that's a sort of slow, iterative process of forming teams, using your informal networks and your social networks to do that, changing out the team members, recycling the ideas, going forward. It's not a question of start, stop, succeed, fail for me. It's more of an organic, evolutionary process of eventually getting to the point where you feel we've figured out the formula such that every time we put that dot through down, the dot in. And I think this is really the challenge, I think, of the entrepreneurial support community and of the entrepreneurs, which is how do you really be much more precise with your interventions and your efforts and your thinking, and how do you make this less around starting a business in terms of the mechanical parts of this, and more around how do I really get the essence of the idea here right.
How do I start solving problems for my customers? How
Exactly.
do I deliver that service straight away? And actually the global brainstorm itself is sort of almost a prime example of that, because we're here with laptops and iPhones and things like that cobbled together on a shoestring to deliver a service based on networks that we've really leveraged online, Facebook, LinkedIn and the likes, to bring together a team of people to make something happen. And ideas do evolve, don't they? Whether it be the ideas supporting the entrepreneurs, whether it be the entrepreneurial ideas, nothing's ever perfect first time. It's a question of that continual learning. And that's very much the process to it.
Well, and the model we've got now is we're really all building airplanes while they're in flight. And we are looking, we had in the Global Entrepreneurship Congress session we had in Shanghai last year, one of the speakers actually said, I'm going to step off stage, I'm back in 15 minutes, I'm going to let the panel continue. By the time he came back, he'd actually formed a company around the idea that was discussed at the beginning of the panel, because he wanted to demonstrate it. He very quickly registered the domain name, he figured out how he could put together a very simple concept, and he actually gave it a very, very quick brand. And it was demonstrating that, that stuff is not the important stuff. The important stuff is figuring out if I got the idea right. There's been too much focus on business plans, there's been too much focus on incorporating the business, and these are the mechanical things, in my view, that don't really get into the innovative creativity thinking and social process of what this is. And it's a team sport. I mean, it's basically it's teams that go out and to go through this process of creating new firms. And we have to, all that we really have to be able to do is for us to do no harm. I mean, sometimes a lot of the work that the entrepreneurship community is doing, the government's doing, and those of us that support entrepreneurs, I think we should acknowledge we've sometimes done too much. A lot of the time we just need to create the right environment, and we just need to make it as easy as possible for those people to be able to collaborate and to be able to team together and do things, even while they're currently in another job, which is one of the reasons that Startup Weekends are
their own fear and mindset. Thank you, Jonathan.
You're welcome. I got one question for so I want to know, do you agree or disagree with my statement? It's entrepreneurs that create venture capitalists. It's not venture capitalists that create entrepreneurs. A little controversy. There we go.
Love it. Entrepreneurs create venture capitalists. Do you agree? Thanks very much. And that's such a great question asked by Jonathan Ortman, which will no doubt come back and brainstorm in greater depth at another time. For now, back to the Global Brainstorm 2012 and how decisions really do define your own destiny. You see, every now and again, one of those ideas comes along that effectively changes everything. And that's pretty much what happened to me when I first conceived the saucepan idea, the concept that won me the British Consumer Invention of the Year. You see, I was sat in my grandmother's kitchen at the time when it suddenly occurred to me that a straight-handled saucepan had never been designed to fit the human hand. It was as if the world changed around me. Not the physical environment, of course, but my mindset, the way I was thinking about things and looking at the situation. And actually, innovators, inventors, entrepreneurs, fundamentally they think very differently from the structured society that surrounds them. We've been taught to think in a very black and white way since the ancient Greeks first started thinking about thinking. And actually, this is quite a two-dimensional approach to making decisions. Weighing up the pros versus the cons, deciding whether something is right or wrong. It's how we're taught to think in schools, but it's no longer as supportive of what we need to be doing. It's time we upgraded our thinking, if you will. Dr. Benjamin Carson, a leading neurosurgeon, he uses a four-pronged approach to decision-making. By asking himself if he was to do something and it was to work out, what would that outcome look like, versus if I do this and it doesn't work out, or if I don't do it and it works out anyway, or if I don't do it and it doesn't work out. By knowing the answers, you start to build a more rounded understanding of your situation. Now, Dr. Edward de Bono, whose parallel thinking tool, the 6 thinking hats, really does help to engage with a more holistic brain to examine a situation from a number of different perspectives and to provoke and stimulate those other ideas too, enables you to understand your situation in greater depth and reach a better conclusion as a result. Now, we often talk about good decisions as being those rounded, balanced decisions. And in terms of a rounded decision, looking at these diagrams, I know which tool I'd rather use. And this is this 7-pronged approach on the right-hand side of the page. Over on the left, we see the 2-dimensional pros and cons, the quadrant, the 6 thinking hats, and then this 7-pronged approach, which we're using today. Now, in order to understand how this can be of real value to you, it's important that you know how decisions are currently being made. And a little look at the headlines reveals that actually there's an awful lot of procrastination going on in the world at the moment. Indecision, which is all procrastination actually is, costs more than recovering from the wrong decision, believe it or not. The costs come in the time that you waste worrying about a situation without actually learning anything new. Motivation is soon consumed and energy starts to run dry. So you're much better off making the wrong decision and learning from that, recovering from that and moving on, than not making a decision at all. Often when we also make decisions, we do so as if we're wearing blinkers. You might have heard people ask you, what are your options? And you start to list out that which you know, A, B or C, without stopping to think about what X, Y or Z could actually be. You can't decide to do something if you haven't thought about it yet, and this is very limiting right from the start of the process. It's time to start engaging with much more of your brain. You see, scientists in recent years have been paralleling it to studying the universe, so infinite does it appear to be. Hawkins described the universe as being bounded but constantly expanding. So if we think about that in terms of our knowledge, well, it's limited, but the more we know, the more we realise how much more there is to learn. So we begin to stretch those boundaries. You might have heard people talk about this left and right-hand brain. Certainly the brain's capable of quadrillions of operations per second. They say the right brain's responsible for that creative, imaginative, rhythmical thinking, and the left brain's more responsible for that logical, linear, scientific, if you will, trail of thought. But in actual fact, there's little science to support such a geographical divide, and it's when both sides, both the critical and creative thinking skills come together, that the real sparks of genius begin to emerge. Now, the weather forecast tool that we're using throughout this brainstorming exercise really intuitively and easily invites you to think critically and creatively at much the same time. It consistently saves time in reaching a decision in the process. In fact, on average, we're saving about 45 minutes in the hour. We're literally reaching incredible decisions in 15 minutes. I sat down with one company, their entire research and development team had spent 2.5 years working on a particular problem, and we had a simple solution within 15 minutes. Now, you can imagine their managing director could hardly believe it. But the truth was, all I'd done was invite this team of experts to look at the situation slightly differently, and the simple solutions had emerged. In so doing, you begin to create a more creative culture around you. People collaborate more freely, and decisions begin to be reached by common consensus. Everyone's contributed to that vision, which is now clear in the individual's heads. And it's much easier to align actions and to find that true sense of understanding why, when, where, and what the greater rewards are from doing something that restores that sense of passion too. leaders are fundamentally people capable of generating new ideas and then communicating them effectively so other people can follow and join in that common vision. It's important that you know how to generate ideas too, and I really believe that this weather forecast machine is an innovation generating one. It's certainly a mechanism for high growth, and it's a framework that enables you to reach these balanced decisions because it's actually based on nature's most balanced ecosystem, the weather. When we look at it in diagrammatical form, we can kind of see how by looking at a situation from a number of different points of view, you'll gain a greater understanding too. As part of this Global Brainstorm 2012, I am launching my weather forecast brainstorming and decision-making book. If you're striving for growth, whether that be personally or professionally, if you want that peak performance that comes from engaging with more of your amazing minds, then this book will certainly open your thoughts up wider and introduce you to this powerful thinking tool. It's available on paperback on Lulu and electronic version on Amazon Kindle. You'll find a few links above the page, so by all means click those and go through. There's an early bird offer. The price will probably double by the end of the week. So take advantage and grab your copy now, and do please let me know how you get on with it too. I'm very much looking for testimonials to print on the back cover. So if you'd be so kind and generous as to send me an email, I'd greatly appreciate getting any kind of response to how you find using the weather forecast and the information in the book. There's a lot of it, I'll tell you. In the meantime, what are we doing here? Well, effectively, we're using the tool, we're putting it into practice. You might not necessarily have realised it up until now, but we've been laying the land. We've been going through the first part of the process, really understanding the current situation, stepping back from it, not necessarily judging it, accepting it as it is in the way a cartographer charted with mapping out a new terrain might simply observe and record. That's all we've been doing. Andrew's recording in the form of the mind map. Next, we're going to step into the sun mindset. Then we're going to look at the winds, the rainbow, the rain, the snow, and finally we'll draw up the weather report, which will really be the revealing part of this process, a chance for us to understand what actions we can really take to improve the situation. So let's step into the sunshine mindset now. Now, this is fairly easy to explain. You can picture one of those beautiful sunny days when it feels almost as if everything's going your way. You can see a long way onto the horizon, and the sun's rays fuel you with energy, giving you that sense that anything could be possible. So I'd really like you to adopt this positive, energetic, full of vitality mindset that the sunshine offers you in terms of a metaphor, and begin to think about your own particular project or problem, whatever it is you're working on. Draw up your own mind map by adding in this concept of what your situation might actually look like on a beautiful sunny day, on a day when it really feels as if everything's going your way. And in the meantime, I'll go back into the room and see what some of the people we've got here today have got to say about beautiful sunny days. Martin, you've got your cup of coffee ready to hand. What does the ideal situation look like to you? Or, on a day when everything's going your way, what would that appear to be in the vision of a small business building itself up?
Probably just generally feeling happy, feeling sorted, self-sufficient, just being able to provide for family, and sort of no major worries really. Fundamentally are probably financial problems out the window, and nice bright sunshine. Somewhere to run.
Thank you. And Mark, if suddenly the world of entrepreneurship wakes up and it's beautifully sunny and all rosy around us, what does that situation look like in the world of Idea Space Global?
I hope you can hear me now. I think really it's about optimism. One of the great things that takes an entrepreneur forward is one, a great belief in the idea, but more to the point, strangely, it's what you don't know that allows you to to blissfully go on to some degree of ignorance, believing you can achieve something. So in some ways, ignorance is bliss, and that's a sunny moment in itself. But That aside, I think it is the belief that it's possible, that you can achieve something, that maybe you can change the world in a funny, small or large way, that you can, possibly the other part of it is social, the fact that you're going to be doing this with other people, and what you can bring to others and how you might surprise them with what you're going to create or provide as a service or a product, whatever you're doing. And that's, applies whether it's a commercial enterprise or a social enterprise. Both can be just as rewarding. That would be my sunny moment, I think.
That sounds like a very good sunny moment to me. Innovation Warehouse look like on a beautiful sunny day?
What does Innovation Warehouse look like on a beautiful sunny day? Can I answer a different one? I know what it looks like on a really rainy day.
Not just yet.
Okay.
I'm getting to that. Brigitte, in your world, beautiful sunny day.
A beautiful sunny day in my world really looks like this. Because there can be clouds on a beautiful sunny day, and the clouds can be either my clients' beliefs that they have at the moment, or the language that they use. So what do we then look like and say, what is there behind that cloud? So if you move that word that you're using currently that doesn't really make you feel sunny, and you put a different word in its place, or you have a belief that currently doesn't really support the sunny weather, what belief can you put in place that makes the cloud vanish and the sun appear?
I think that's a beautiful answer, Brigitte, and you're absolutely spot on. It's quite easy to put clouds in our own if we're not careful, and it's important to have this broad picture outlook. Liam, in the world of bigger plates, what's a beautiful sunny day look like to you?
Well, the main thing for me when I would be feeling like that is when I've got a sense of momentum around everything I'm doing. So a constant sense that things are evolving, growing, moving in the right direction, or even if they're moving in the wrong direction, at least I'm learning quickly that it's the wrong direction. My little map.
Aha!
I can't see where there. I've got some other. It's probably all backwards there, isn't it? I don't know.
No.
But I've got a sense of optimism around new ideas. There's actually, I think, a really big point of what some of the other guys have said around the confidence you feel. When things are all going well, you feel confident, and you also feel quite confident in taking on new challenges, trying new ideas, and testing new things. So I think when everything's sunny, that's how I feel. I feel I can sort of take on anything with my business.
Wonderful, and I think that you're absolutely right. It gives us that sort of extra energy, that extra belief, if we can call it that. And actually, one of the questions I always invite people to spend some time thinking about in the sun mindset is, what would they do? I think the sun's energy provides us with almost 1,000 watts per square metre. So with that energy, with all the resources you need, if money was no object, if you had all the time you wanted in the world, what would you then be doing with your day? And that allows you just to push yourself and your ideas and thoughts a little further. Liam, having shared your mind map there, I think I might ask Andrew if we could have a look at his mind map. Andrew, do you want to talk us through your mind map? I don't know if you've got your audio on, whether the microphone's on mute or not. I'm going to switch on to mute so you can share a little bit about how this mind map's building up at the moment.
Well, we've been collecting ideas from the ideal situation. I've been filling those in on the right-hand side there. We've got 3 other main areas to do, which we'll be covering next. The mind map grows with the thoughts, freely and easily.
So yeah, it looks like the mind map's building up really nicely there. Looking at these positive ideas. What about anybody in the chat box at home? Can we get any positive thoughts out there? What happens in the world of your small businesses at home when suddenly it's a beautiful sunny day when you wake up and the world's going your way? And when you start to glance out across the horizon too, what does your immediate future start to look like? That's the joy of the sun mindset. It shows us a little bit more about where we're actually going in the future and how we want that to evolve for us. Like, as I said earlier, there's no point in building a business unless that end vision is something we actually want to create. I got myself into a bit of a situation like that with the saucepan, to be honest with you. You have this ingenious idea, you win the British Consumer Invention of the Year award, you start selling saucepans in and having them arrive in container loads, and suddenly you realise you're building a business you don't necessarily want to own. I didn't want to be surrounded by boxfuls of saucepans or necessarily have teams of international sales staff running around the world selling saucepans on my behalf. But I hadn't thought about that when I first started up. I just had an idea and I was possessed with it, and I wanted to drive that forward and make that successful in its own right, to get it onto a shop shelf. I didn't stop to necessarily think about where that journey would ultimately take me. This is one of the things, isn't it, Tony, that a lot of entrepreneurs face, is having that clarity of vision or lack of clarity of vision. What would you say to that? Have you got anything to add?
That vision, like that. I tend not to find any entrepreneur who lacks vision. Vision is never a particular problem. Neither do I lack or find them lacking opinion. Neither do I find them lacking facts, nor waking up on sunny days. What I find they're desperately bad at doing is implementing, is actually achieving something on an achievable timescale. They're great at where it will end up in 20 years' time with a great wind and everything else behind them. What they don't usually know is what to do tomorrow or the day after, and what could be achieved in 2 weeks. So,
Bruce, you're nodding there. Would you like to add too?
Yes, sure. Yes. In my work, I see a lot of people indeed that are very outcome focused, but outcome in the long term. If I ask people, what are your dreams, then it's 20 years out, 100 years out. And if I say, okay, do you know whether you actually then need to turn right or left out of your front door? No idea. So that is the first step, is usually what's lacking, plus motivation for that first step, because the motivation is there for the mansions and the $1 million, but not necessarily for the groundwork and the boring stuff which gets you to the mansions and the $1 million.
So that's action then. We need to take action, we need to implement things, and we need to get much, much, much more strategic and specific about our short-term goals. It's all very well having that long-term vision, but what are these small, easy steps that are going to take us there? How can we clarify our ideas in such a way as to make them something which we can hold ourselves accountable to achieving, whether it be just a small step, talking to one other person about that idea, connecting with one like-minded group of people that are in the same field as you, in the social media, in the social networks, whether it be turning up at one event or spending some time thinking about it in detail. Set yourself these small, achievable, short-term goals and just measure your progress in baby steps whilst having that big vision out there for the future. It really does make a big, big difference. Does anyone else have any sunny day thoughts to share? We've got a guest in the room. Aoife, do you have any sunny day thoughts to share?
My day seems quite cloudy and dark at the moment.
Oh.
I'm just trying to look at my mind map, or where I'm going. I don't know where I'm going. In one hand, in one side I see a professional career, and I can take it forward in the upcoming years, 5 years or whatever. And on the other hand, I've got a business idea which I don't know whether it could work at all. And if I could leave what I'm doing now and get into this idea and drag down in it, would I fail? What would happen? It's just, I don't know. At the moment, mine is quite cloudy and dark.
Well, I think I have to go back to what Mark said in order to answer that for you, Elif, because there is no failing in this game. If you're going through that process of learning, if you're gaining new skills, if you're taking yourself, out of your comfort zone to the point of stretching it to feeling more comfortable in a wider circle, then you've achieved something. Whether the end result on paper, dictates a profit, whether you're held up as being the Richard Branson of the future, a success story in your own right, or whether you've simply just met some like-minded people, connected to other people, opened your own ideas, understandings, beliefs, challenge those. It's good to do that every now and again. So that's what I like to see, I don't like the word failure in that sense. So failure very much comes down to how we define failure, doesn't it? And failure, as far as I'm concerned, is of the physical kind, the point at which, you know, you fall backwards into your coffin and no longer can actually make any progress. But whilst I'm meeting new people, learning new skills, sharing, growing, contributing in positive ways, then I don't see that as ever being failing. I see it as being a new result from which I can learn more to move forward further. So that does take us into the next mindset. And let's go along to my slideshow. But we're talking about the winds as being the next metaphor in the global brainstorm, in the weather forecast way of working. And actually, this is my favourite metaphor. Now, when I first told a CEO about this, he absolutely laughed his head off in the back of a taxi, not quite believing that I was referring to other people as what he was obviously taking back to, you know, playground jokes about things that happen in your pants and the likes. But nevertheless, when you start to look at the concept of wind and other people around us, well, we quite quickly realise that you can't actually see the wind. We can only see the ripple effect of the wind. We see the leaves blowing about, or we see, you know, the towers falling down. We can't actually see the wind, but neither can we control it. The wind exists completely out of our control. What we can do is we can start to harness it to our advantage. So in this instance, the wind represents all of the external influences that affect your decision-making process. These will be local winds, the people that surround you, your friends, your family, your colleagues, your peers, the local communities that you are part of every day. These are local winds. They might be nice gentle breezes, or they might be icy cold slaps around the face from time to time. If we start to look at them as being like the wind, then we start to set our sails differently as opposed to harnessing them. The prevailing winds might be the fashions and trends in the industry, the policies, the legislations, the greater consensus of a wider community, the kind of common way of looking at the situation. So we're going to step out of the presentation, back to my camera now, because I really wanted to talk to some of the people in the room here about what are some of the groups of people, the things that are influencing the way entrepreneurship, the way innovation is evolving at the moment. And are we really doing enough to support entrepreneurs, innovators as they start up? And the question that I want to ask everybody is, where do you go to get that gust of wind, that extra energy that will carry you through the challenging times? Because we do all need that. Most definitely. A lot of the people that I go to are perhaps sat in the room right now. But it's important that we do have that burst of fresh air coming in from elsewhere when we're perhaps lacking in energy ourselves. So what are some of the winds that affect this situation? Mark, Global Entrepreneurship Week is one of them. Tell us more about what Global Entrepreneurship Week is setting out to do and how it could support our audience at home.
Right. I think Global Entrepreneurship Week offers almost in every country an opportunity to meet other people who are either like-minded or can inspire you. It gives you an opportunity to join some form of community, whether that's just at an event or to take part in an activity, a little bit like this one, for instance. It really is, because sometimes entrepreneurs feel alone. They're quite often doing it by themselves. They're doing it in a back room. They're trying to do it at night. They're trying to hold down a job at the same time. They might be doing it with other people not necessarily supporting them because they don't have the same level of faith that they do in their idea. So I think it's occasions like Global Entrepreneurship Week give them an opportunity to feel that they're part of something very large. And this week there's possibly 11 million people around the planet who will be engaging in one event or another. So you do suddenly feel that you are part of something much, much bigger. And more to the point, it's about learning. It's about learning from other people's stories, what their experiences have been. And those are the rough with the smooth, the great successes, but also the trials and tribulations of trying to set up and start up a business. So I think really for me it's the opportunity to meet other people and to share stories with people, and that it's so focused in 1 week and it's on such a scale that it really does, I would think, engender a fair amount of faith and belief that it's still worth pushing on and continuing with their idea.
Gemma, where do you go? I mean, I know that we've sort of answered this question a little bit earlier. I guess what I'm asking you to tell our listeners more about is really how actually big the world is and how easy it can now be to actually connect to people very like you. So how would people take advantage of other wins that they might not necessarily know at the moment? How would they make these connections in this day and age?
Yeah, well, I do, of course, use social media to make those connections and to gather around me the people that will re-energize me. I'm a member of several groups on Facebook and on LinkedIn and so on. I do find that Facebook works better for that instant response. So it's important to gather around you a good group of entrepreneurs or individuals. I have one that's very local to me, but then I'm a member of other groups that are more national and widespread. And sometimes it's about going in there and having a chat, not necessarily about business, just shooting the breeze and saying, is anybody else having this problem, or does anybody know how to do this, or can I get help with something else? And a lot of those groups, people want to help. That's what they're there for. They know that by helping, they will get help in return when they need it. So there's tons of places to do that. I don't limit myself to online, and I don't think anybody should. I mean, I know that's what I do for a living, but really, if you only live online, then you're going to be missing out on a lot. So do get out and go to events as well. Again, you may well find those online, so use it as a resource. Type into the search bar on Twitter or on Facebook or on LinkedIn about events. I've also got one other thing that does give me a real blast of fresh air every day, and that's my daughter. So don't forget to look at home for your inspiration as well. It could be, you know, lessons that you've learned from your family, from your ancestors, and of course those that you're doing it all for in the first place as well. So there's many places that you can find inspiration.
And I know when I first had my idea with the saucepan, going along to the British Invention Show, which is the event that Kane actually runs, going along to the British Invention Show and suddenly finding myself in a room full of like-minded people, having been, I don't know, to an extent considering myself to be a little bit crazy, or certainly being judged to be so by many of the people who were surrounding me on a day-to-day basis, for having this belief in this idea and for, you know, pursuing it against the odds, spending quite a lot of money I didn't necessarily have available and taking some risks which I wouldn't necessarily repeat. But it was that sudden connection with like-minded people that made me realise that, you know, hey, I wasn't the only one having these crazy ideas, and actually how important is it to have those long-term peer learning environments. So Tony, you do a fantastic job of building that here at the Innovation Warehouse. That's do you want to share a little bit more about how that works as a collaboration, as a way for people to come together to boost each other's energy?
Yeah, can I go back to your wins and the analogy that you use? Because you said some of the stuff, the thing about wins is it's unseen. And my question to myself is, where are my unseen places I go to get the word stories? And yes, I go back to the family, I go to books, I go to the cinema. You've got to go to places which you don't normally work in to get stories which are unseen. You then said it's about harnessing. Where do I go to harness? I go skiing. I used to do a lot of extreme sports. Unfortunately, the body is failing now. I've got a bit older, but I still ski. I still exercise. And I try to use it by harnessing things that bring you to a point which can force you to think. And then you said it's the thing about wind, there's no control. So what are the things that are actually outside of my control? What would create an environment which would actually help me? One of the things that's completely outside of my control is tax. And one of the things that really gets me is where people worry, you know, they don't realize actually what the government can do with taxes to actually try and create investment environments to actually encourage entrepreneurship. So just going back to your wins analogy, in the Innovation Warehouse, though, we actually have quite a brutal environment. What the environment tries to do is you have to achieve every 2 weeks. And the inspiration as such is there's a deadline. And if you're not achieving on a 2-weekly basis, it's thanks very much. You're probably not going to be achieving, probably time to move on. So sometimes we see it as focus and actually just giving people a drop deadline rather than saying you can drift off into oblivion, which always comes back to you got to perform. If you want to build a business, you actually have to perform. You have to deliver.
Thank you. Thank you. And Liam, you mentioned a little bit earlier actually how your meeting with Andrew, who's busy building our mind map there, was something where you came together with a like mind. How important do you think it is to have these slightly stronger wins, if I can call them that, metaphorically speaking, these mentors within reach that empower you to get to the next level in whatever you're trying to do?
Yeah, it is important, and I think the great thing for anyone who's thinking about starting a business or starting a business is they're now infinitely more accessible than they were even 5-6 years ago when I started. So the accessibility, whether you're using social media or not, actually, is people do have a willingness to meet, people have a willingness to share their ideas, and there are a huge number of people out there who are perfectly willing to help and give advice completely for free. And you have to be a good judge, obviously, of good versus bad advice. But the ability now to engage with people with smarter brains than your own is amazing. And I take advantage of that all the time. Your question around where do I go for invigorating energy, I go to our community. I have the benefit now of having 40,000 mind mapping people using our site. So if I need some invigorating energy, I can go to them almost and ask them, okay, what would you be doing? What would you like to see? How would you like to do it? And several people have already mentioned events as well. And I think it's important to go to events that are completely unrelated to what you do. Sometimes that can give you a little spark that you never thought about using. I found myself going to some quite bizarre events, really, just to see how things are done in other industries, see how other sectors might go about some of my problems. So there are loads of opportunities out there, online and offline, to get some sort of invigorating energy from people who know stuff that you don't, and that's pretty cool, I think.
Bridge, what do you have to say about that?
Very interesting. When you talk about wind, I know that you and I went through the weather forecast many years ago, which was so impressive. And since then, actually, this year earlier, I decided that I was going to learn how to kite surf. And that has everything to do with wind, and I know nothing about wind. So for me, when you talk about wind now, it has a whole different meaning, as well as the wind, the metaphorical wind, as the real wind. And I am learning, so that means that I spent about probably 99% of the time in water, so it's good that I did this in Torrey Summer Space. I hi to everyone who's looking, because I know that you are. And so the 1% I really get up on the board, so I managed 10 meters or something like that. And for me, it's really important, and now we're going back to the metaphorical wind, to really see the learning that you do, and I'm talking to you also, Elif, where a lot of my entrepreneurs that I work with sometimes say, gosh, I see no progress, I see nothing, and I'm just not seeing anything. And what I then ask is, are you actually looking at the baby steps that you're making, or are you looking at the mansion that you're actually going to be in 20 years' time? Because you may want to put some smaller measure points in between, and to celebrate the little baby achievements that you have, and look at it from day to day rather than I can't just see any steps. So that's one thing. Back to the wind is that what you mentioned, Liam, and also the German earlier, is the peer group, and that's what Celia said as well. The wind can be so much a peer group. So really look at the kind of people that you surround yourself with. So if the people that you surround yourself with are going to say you're crazy, you can't do this, who's ever done this before, who's ever created a music system like that, a source system like that, in my brother's case, a tablet computer like that, we're sitting here with us on our laps. So really surround yourself with those kinds of people that will be like your raving fans, or at the least people that support what you do. So that's what I would have to say about me.
Yeah, and accept that every now and again, those squalls, those icy cold gusts, those hurricanes and tornadoes do come and cause destruction. But if rather than trying to control that before it arrives, we see it for what it actually is and start to either batten down the hatches or turn our sails slightly differently, harness that energy to the best of our ability, deciding perhaps it's too strong for us, we need to protect ourselves in order to back away from that. Suddenly that becomes much more empowering in terms of making our own progress without necessarily relying on other people to force us to live by their whims and ways. So back to the presentation, because we're going to move out of this mindset. Andrew, I'd love to come and have a look at the mind map that you're building, maybe after the end of the next mindset, because I'm sure everyone at home is building up their mind maps. Just allow these thoughts and ideas that jump into your head to flow quite freely. Think about who's influencing you right now, and think about how you can actually use this energy to bring about faster change. As Mark just said there, winds can be a catalyst to change. They can certainly add an extra gust to what it is that you're doing to accelerate your progress. And in the Weather Forecast book, which launches today, I have to add, woohoo! Oh, I've sold a copy already, apparently. Fantastic. Thank you very much. But anyway, in this book, I relate the 7 steps to successfully managing change. And I'm just sharing this now by means of breaking out of the brainstorm a little bit to understand what we're looking at doing now. So we're really looking at understanding what the root cause of the problems actually are. Having done that, having really become an expert in the problems, we can then set about starting to solve them. Certainly in the world of invention and innovation, and I'm sure Kane will support me on this, we see lots of people jump straight into the solution generating aspect of the development stage without necessarily spending enough time understanding the problem they're solving, and then they wonder why there's no market for their product. Well, there was no product, there was no problem there in the first place. So it's really understanding what the problem is before generating the solutions, and then looking to generate those solutions with the community that they're actually going to serve, so as to create a collective value-driven vision, if you will. Nothing can be designed in a vacuum. We spoke about that earlier. It's very important that you engage in the community that's actually going to benefit from whatever solution you're offering in order to create something that they almost feel as if they've contributed to. It's part of their vision too. In that instance, that gives you the opportunity to promote profitable pioneers. Brigitte just gave me a beautiful little example then. I think Brigitte was actually the very first person that I ever brainstormed the weather or used the weather forecast with outside of myself. So this had been a system that had served me my whole life, really. I remember certainly thinking along these ways, ages 7 or 8. At the time I was listening to what Edward de Bono was teaching my then father's business partner. And I couldn't remember what colour hat went with what mindset, but what I did know was that the weather was a very balanced and intuitive way of creating a balanced and intuitive decision-making process. I wasn't perhaps calling it that as a 7-year-old, but I was using the mindsets. So when Brigitte then mentioned earlier how she'd found it quite rewarding, she was instantly becoming one of my profitable pioneers. She was pioneering out, in her own world, something which I'd given her as in its early stages. So she'd helped me to develop it by understanding where she was actually coming from and how she responded to it. So it is important to get people to buy into this vision of yours and then to empower them to feel a sense of ownership over it to an extent, to become the early adopters of whatever it is that you're trying to drive out to a wider audience, so that together you can broaden this mission out. The mission, obviously, is then about taking action consistently and continuously. And we've heard from lots of people that this is where small business owners really let themselves down, is in not being able to commit to that cause, in holding the vision most clearly, but not actually then committing to taking those day-to-day small baby steps to making their dreams come true. And at that point, of course, we must celebrate success, more than just for the sake of patting each other on the back, but actually because it's a great way to encourage more people to get on board. People like success stories and they want to get involved in them. So those are my 7 steps to successful change management. I hope we'll get through the understanding of the problem today. I hope we'll generate some simple solutions too. And I hope perhaps that we'll collectively start to create a value-driven vision, so that you can perhaps go out and become one of my profitable pioneers in building up this idea of the global brainstorm. The global brainstorm itself is a vision that I have. It stretches the imagination slightly, like this next mindset that we're about to engage with, the rainbow mindset. And the reason why I say it stretches the imagination is because really none of the people in this room, or perhaps not even you sitting at home listening to me right now, had a clue what I was doing today. I've been harping on about the global brainstorm. I truly believe that by collectively bringing our brains together, we can actually start to move from, rather than conflicting and competing with each other, collaborating creatively instead. And by means of a social experiment, I've delivered something as opposed to nothing. I've got no idea why I'm fixing the camera quite so intently, seeing as you've got the screen show up at the moment. However, I do feel like I'm talking to you at home by means of helping you to understand why I'm doing this in the first place. Now, it is important to stretch your imagination. If you get too bogged down in what's true and what's real and what actually happens around you, then you no longer challenge the situation that you're in. And so the rainbow mindset provides us with this opportunity to really stretch our imagination. What would you do if you were sitting on top of a rainbow? How would you see yourself differently? How can you stretch your imagination to bring about greater change in your actual environment back at home? Kane, you're a tremendous lateral thinker. You have a very powerful imagination. How important is it to forget the reality when developing some of these ideas?
Forget the reality, that's kind of interesting. Well, there's probably more than one reality, actually. Yeah. I've got my own my own realities, I suppose. I should probably talk about my my own experience. It's funny because earlier on I was talking about fear, and fear being a big obstacle, and that's probably one thing I don't really have, is too much fear. And Mark, you also talking about that earlier about sometimes it's good to just storm right in and go for it. And I suppose if I sort of reflect back, when I was actually around the time I was working on the digital audio player, or I needed to raise quite a lot of money to fund that, and it's always hard enough when you're working in a new technology which people don't understand, and it's quite hard being sort of in your early 20s saying, I've got this wonderful idea to send music down telephone lines and there's no moving parts, it's digital, it's going to be better quality than everyone else. People are sort of patting you on the head and saying, there's a nice chap, take a couple of Disprin or something. And I had to raise money for that, and at the time I was very into sort of trying to reorganize the music industry. So I thought, well, I know what I'll do. I'll put on a show, and maybe I'll make some television programs. And I was about 23 years old, and going back now to 1982, and I sort of went along and I booked Olympia actually initially to put a show on for 7 days. I remember distinctly it was 1981, and I paid them £30,000 deposit, which I actually lost my deposit because it was just impossible to get anyone to work and anyone to come along for January the 1st. They thought I was all completely insane, except for Olympia, who were probably quite delighted at the £30,000 deposit during a time that they all knew that they weren't going to work. But anyway, it didn't stop me. I carried on, and 3 months later I booked Wembley. And I had 36,000 people to that event. And while I was running that event, I thought, it'd be really nice. My favourite band as I grew up was 10cc, I'm Not in Love. And I remember when I was 17 and I had my first Volkswagen Beetle, buying that cassette tape and driving from London to Southend and kept winding it back to the beginning and playing I'm Not in Love continually until I practically wore the tape out all the way to Southend and back. And so here I was at sort of my early 20s. I thought, I know I'm going to put on a show. I thought, I know, I'll get 10cc to play. I know, I'll make a 1-hour TV special of them. I'll sell it to television all over the world. And the thing is, I hadn't really made any television before, and I hadn't put on any stage shows. But there weren't really any rules other than one I was making as I go along. So I staged the first music show in 1982, International Music Show at Wembley. Did the second one at Ali Pali, and I had 23,000 people at the first one, and 36,000 people at the second one. But at the first one, I shot that 1-hour TV special, and I phoned up 10cc, my early 20s, and I said, hey guys, how would you like to come and make a 55-minute TV special? And they went, hey, that would be, you know, great. So they all got back together again, and out they came, and I made that. And it was wherever I picked up the phone, you know, I didn't really know I couldn't do it. So I picked up the phone to Don Kirshner rock show in Los Angeles, and I said, hey, you know, I'm doing this like TV show. Would you be interested in me, you know, sending it out by satellite live to Los Angeles? And they said, yeah, we'll have a bit of that, you know. And then I sent out a text to about 75 broadcasters around the world and said, you know, I'm making this TV program, 10cc live in concert, you know, it's going to be great, and I've got great director, etc., etc. And that program went about £30,000 into profit in those days before I even rolled the camera. Anyway, the point to all this is that, you know, you can be frightened of something. It is good to do your research, but, you know, at the end of the day, if you believe in something and you've done enough research to know that, you know, you've not got your head completely up your bottom and you've got a serious idea, you know, then there is a point where you need to really, you know, take a belt and braces approach and kick ass until you get that idea moving, and don't take no for an answer, you know. And I don't need to sort of, well, if you don't heard it, for those of you that are a bit younger, maybe never heard of the Beatles, might not know that actually they were turned down by numerous record companies before one record company eventually had the vision, you know, to sign them. And yeah, they are an old band, but you know, they're still, I still listen to them, and of course they're still now the #1 band downloaded on iTunes, so I'm not alone. And they were turned down again and again and again, you know. So do your research, you know, make sure that you're not, you know, backing a complete plonker of an idea. And if you know that you've got a decent idea, then roll your sleeves up and push like hell, because, you know, nothing's going to stop you if you put the energy in, you put the momentum in, you kick hard. You can get that, you can get it through to market for sure. And I think I probably covered that, but or maybe I haven't even addressed what you asked. It's been on my mind.
That's fantastic. And the truth is, the imagination is one of those funny things. As children, we have such powerful, strong imaginations. And somehow society conditions it out of us. And we've just had somebody put up in the chat talking about crazy ideas again. And that whole, you know, conditioning of, are we being a little bit mad in our thinking over here, is something which can hinder our thinking. And so by giving yourself permission to have those crazy thoughts, to push your imagination out, you can then start to build up a way of bringing that more into, you know, adding a degree of value of it, adding some constraints into it, making it function within the real world too. So the question that I always like to ask in terms of provoking people's imagination, stimulating them into thinking a little bit more laterally outside of their comfort zone, is what would you do about your situation right now if you had superhero powers? So we've not actually spoken today to a tremendous help who's been around all day trying to make sure that our computers are all functioning. Malcolm is actually also somebody who came on a course that I delivered down in East Sussex about 4 or 5 months ago now. Malcolm, would you want to introduce yourself a little bit and tell us what you would do within your situation if you had superhero powers?
Hi there. Where to begin? Yeah, I think I'll start off with the course. I was playing around wondering what to do, and I went through the weather forecast, and I found that after working for other people and being very successful and having businesses built around myself by them and becoming redundant from those, that I needed to find my own voice. And how the superhero thing came for me was, I have to step back a bit to the winds of change. And it was only really once I did the winds of change thing where I got kind of blown in the right direction, really. And the seeds were sown where I had to find my own voice. I've been successful in bits of media. I've been successful in some marketing and some advertising. And I needed to find my own voice. So I'm now currently at the City of Brighton College as a student journalist, learning how to put my voice across and actually report other people's voices. And I think if I was going to put some superhero vision and sensory powers on it, it'd be nice to just project into the future and idealise a bit and just actually daydream a bit of if I do things in the kind of Maslow kind of way where all my survival needs are covered and I can self-actualise myself, realise where I've been, realise where I am today, and realise where I can go in the future, and actually allow myself to just fantasise.
Not answered my question yet. What would you do if you had superhero powers?
I would fulfil all my wishes and dreams. Yeah. Do you want me to start saying what they are? This could take some...
Liam, you're sat there. If you had superhero powers, what would you do differently?
I guess it depends what the powers are. I think the power I'd quite like would be to be in two places at once. I think that would be a really cool superpower. I've got a slightly bad habit of always thinking there's something more interesting going on somewhere else. And sometimes not necessarily appreciating the interesting things that are happening around me in the here and now. So if I could have a sort of second me to go to the places that I think are more interesting and then report back, and then I'd know for sure, and then I can sort of make an informed decision. That would be my superpower. But I think probably what would happen is the second me would tell me that actually where I am and what I'm doing is really interesting, so stay here and stick with it. I think that would be my superpower choice.
That's a great superpower. It actually does start to open up, the situation that you're in terms of developing ideas too. Because if there was a way of making yourself available in more than one place, and in actual fact you do that pretty successfully online, you can see how you've managed to build up a following of over 40,000 people. So congratulations in achieving your superhero powers without necessarily knowing them.
Very good.
Gemma, what about you? If you had superhero powers, what would they be and how would you use them?
Yeah, that's tempting because there's so many great ones out there. But I think for my work, what I'd really like to be able to do is read people's minds. I deal a lot with education, really, and trying to teach people how to use social media and how to get the best out of it. And if I knew exactly what they didn't know, it would make life much quicker. So I'd be able to really just plug those gaps rather than sometimes starting at the beginning and covering stuff that they already know. I'd also be able to see those confusions and those roadblocks and the times when they start to feel overwhelmed before it reaches their eyes. And again, that would help them take a breath, step back a little bit and concentrate on what their goals are and what they want to achieve. And the fact that it is quite easy to do that. It's a matter of a few steps at a time, that's all. So I think, yeah, I'd like to be able to read people's minds. As long as they're not thinking bad things about me, then I wouldn't like it at all.
And again, Gemma, the way you understand your target market in terms of the way you interact with them, through the activities that you're doing online using social media, to an extent, you're certainly getting quite a clear indication of people's minds. And that in itself is quite revealing. Martin, quickly, if you had superhero powers, how would you use them? What would you do?
I think it's just been hit on the head, actually, for me. I think I need to be able to step outside my body, look at myself from other people's eyes. For the industry that I'm in, unfortunately, it's very egotistical, very vain, and I'm probably a little bit too harsh with the way I speak to people sometimes, because I think they should be doing more, improving themselves more. So I think to look at it from an outside point of view, so that I can then take that on board and then turn myself into something that's a little bit more productive.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I'm going to I'm going to let Brigitte come back on this one, but we know what we say. We always end up saying to other people what we really need to do ourselves, and I think that you're absolutely in the process of embracing that in terms of this self-improvement, this continual growth, and that's really the journey that we're all on together. Bridge, if you had superhero powers, what would they be and how do you use them?
I think what we spoke about beliefs and baby steps and all that earlier before. I think if I had superhero powers, I would implant chips into people that they have those things automatically rather than having to go through many sessions, and to just have those kind of things automatically, which in all honesty we have as little children we have, and it's conditioned out of us. So that's what I would.
Anybody else got anything they particularly want to add with regards to imagination and superhero powers? But I think you're absolutely right. You know, we have these inherent beliefs. We are much more capable of thinking laterally when we let go of some of those beliefs sometimes. And that's where provoking, using metaphors such as the rainbow that gives you permission just to be a little bit silly for 5 minutes can actually help to broaden your thoughts in the real world too. So I will jump back to, actually no, I was going to ask Andrew Wilcox if I may look at the fantastic mind map that he's building for us. Andrew, will you be kind enough to show us your mind map? Will you maybe? Yeah, it certainly is there. Goodness me, look at that growing. So we haven't done the rain yet. We've been looking at the winds. Gosh, there's an awful lot of winds that we could be tapping into in reality, especially this particular week, Global Entrepreneurship Week. Do go onto the site. Do look at what other events are around. There's a lot of free information being given away this week. Ideal world. Wow, that's amazing. Confidence is the word that jumped out there. And I think that that's true, actually. Connections and credibility are the two words that I concluded as a result of the last brainstorming session like this that we delivered at the Global Entrepreneurship Congress, were the things that people didn't necessarily look for as startups, but which were the things that actually made a lot more difference than cash does. So, yeah, rainbow, lose your fear, up the top, up there again. So this is a lot of it's what it's all about, getting past that, sticking with it, stepping outside of your comfort zone, to turn around to stepping outside of yourself so as to be able to observe yourself. That's interesting because that's very much what mind mapping and developing these ideas using this technique will do. So without further ado, let's jump back to, where's it gone? My wonderful screen share. The next mindset that we're looking at, and we are working through these 7 mindsets now. We've got 2 more metaphors left and then the concluding part of the exercise. And Tony, you were asking earlier, well, here we go. We have the rain mindset. Now, rainy days tend to be those grey, drizzly, miserable types of days. But what happens on a rainy day is we actually change our sense of perspective. You might have noticed this. In the sun, on a sunny day, you'll look up, hold your head high, you can see onto the horizon. On a rainy day, on the other hand, when you're walking down the street, you check for yourself if you don't believe me, but you'd hang your head down. You don't look up, you look down. And then for that reason, you tend to notice the details a lot more, apart from the fact we obviously see the drops of rain on the windowsill. So this is really an opportunity to take some time to find the benefits of thinking negatively, if I can say that. It's very revealing, and certainly understanding what the potential risks could be in advance, what the potential problems could be, gives you that opportunity to protect yourself against them. So if you were to look at your situation now in that damp, dreary, everything's going wrong state of mind, what does that actually look like to you? Rain really does reveal these problems to us, and in the same way that we wouldn't notice a leak in the roof on a sunny day, or we wouldn't necessarily notice the blocked drains when there wasn't water flowing through them, doesn't mean that the problems aren't there. So we're using this mindset as an opportunity to really understand what these potential problems could be. I'm going to jump straight to Tony on this one because I think that he perhaps can help us out in terms of understanding what the problems are with regards to building businesses, supporting businesses, our own inherent fears, where do these potential problems often lie, Tony?
I'm probably not going to answer your question, okay? Because when I look at rain, and you're starting off on sunny, and sunny days people can always describe. Rainy days are very, very difficult, and the only rainy days I ever have is when somebody I know is in harm. Because actually, I don't care how much money I lose, I don't care anything else, but when somebody I know is harmed, or any of the guys in here are harmed or in danger, that's a rainy day. The rest of it actually just doesn't matter. And I have a completely different perspective of rain. I'd prefer to take my umbrella and take it the other way round and hold the back end, and so it becomes a nice thing to collect rainwater in. You know, why do you want to keep the rain off you? Actually, getting wet, it's great, it's refreshing. I'm used to climbing mountains. I don't care if I get wet. Go and celebrate it. It's just another day. I don't understand why rain is depressing, but that's because of the way I think. So to me, rain is another opportunity. It's another day to think differently. Sunny is a great day to think differently. Rain is a great day to think differently. When it's snowing, it's a great day to think differently. When it's dull and grey, it's another day to think differently. So what? But a rainy day, somebody gets harmed. That's the days I don't like.
That's absolutely fair enough, and you're right. You know, we need water, we need that rehydration that the rain gives us. The world needs it, and so in the same way as when we're thinking about the situation, it is important that we spend a little bit of time addressing the negative side of things. Now, lots of peak performance coaches talk about, you know, positive thought and think positive, and, you know, don't tell yourself about the negative things or you'll make them happen. Well, if we actually spend some time assessing what those potential risks are, then we can protect against them. Brigitte, you do a lot of work in this area. What do you have to say about it?
And yes, I think there are so many people indeed thinking positively, but there is always there is a positive way of thinking negatively as well. So if that makes any sense. So really looking at the challenges and the things that may come along doesn't mean that you have to see all that's negative as negative. You can also, as my friend next to me says, if there's a rain, you can collect it. If you get lemons, make lemonade. If you come across a roadblock, use it as a starting block. But really look realistically what can come up. So if you're in sales, come up with all the objections that potentially your market can come up with, and look at them beforehand. Don't ignore them, but look at what objections they can come up with and look at how you can solve them, how you can actually turn them into something that, if your market says, well, the handle of the saucepan is too bent for me, what have you got to say about that? Then you immediately have an answer for that. Well, you know, if you are like me, designed with your hand this way, then that will actually be better for you. So that you know in advance what kind of challenges there will be, and you've thought about that, because then also you will show your market that you are knowledgeable about your product. You're not only rah excited about it, but you also know what can come up at the other side.
I think that's very good advice. You're right. And the chapter in my book in terms of positively thinking negatively is called The Positive Power of Negative Speculation. And spending time negatively speculating, thinking of all those objections, as you said, understanding that there is a hurdle in front of me, even if I can't see it right now, I know I'm going to encounter it. How am I going to deal with it when I do? That all prepares you better for the eventuality and helps you to remove some of the risks. So, Mark, perhaps you can talk to us about what are the risks that entrepreneurs face when they start up a business.
Okay, you know, just on that point of rain, for me, it's about a reality check. It's sensing where the negatives are and learning to understand them. If you don't know them, then that's when you're going to come a cropper and you're going to trip over them and have a nasty fall. So, where does that actually, if we take it out of analogy to the reality of trying to start a business, well, that might mean that, you know, how far is your money actually going to go? You know, how much money have you got right now? How much of any resource that you're needing, you know, whether it's even a roof over your head to be able to work. you're probably asking a lot of favours of friends and others to help out in trying to deliver and develop the idea, particularly in the very early stages, pre-revenue, before you start actually turning it into a functioning business. That's really a very difficult and delicate time in many ways, because it is reliant upon an awful lot of goodwill, some degree, a little bit of luck, but on the other hand, a lot of determined effort, negotiating, and arm twisting. But ultimately, it's knowing how far that can go, because if you haven't thought about that seriously, if you haven't felt the wet and being really soaked to the skin with that idea, then you're going to have to find that it's going to come up and surprise you. And somebody's going to say, sorry, we need the room tomorrow, you're out. So then you're working in the cafe and so on. So I think for me, that's what it's about, is the reality and being honest about those things. And as they say, know your enemies and keep them close, because that's how you're going to deal with it. And that, an enemy can be how much cash you do or don't have and how far that's going to take you, and any other resource. And also, in another area which is quite important is, and this is where it's really important to talk to other people, because that's how you know how little you do know or how much you know about anything, because that's going to be revealing. Understanding what you don't know, and therefore what other expertise you need on your team, is really important. You talk to most takeover experts, the first person they want to get out of the company once they've paid for it is the founder. Why? Because often they're the worst CEO you could have. Because that's not why they got into the business. They didn't want to run a business. Most entrepreneurs don't actually want to run a business per se. They want to see their idea happen. That's their dream. They're rock and rollers. They're not suits. They have to put on a suit to talk to the bank and to maybe talk to other people. But we're all pretenders in that respect. We didn't start as a suit. Quite often. It's not to say suits don't start businesses. But it's often, it's recognizing, therefore, the danger signs, the realities of what don't you know and what expertise do you need. Do you need somebody who's going to really understand how to do your books? If you're lousy at the math, you hate it, and you don't really get on with doing the figures, don't just let it fall apart, because that's going to come back and bite you. Find somebody who's going to look after that, take it seriously, because it has to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
So those are the sort of issues.
Yeah, absolutely.
Knowing the reality.
Knowing the reality, understanding the risks, and then taking these protective measures against them. Tony might carry his umbrella upside down, but I want mine to protect my head, and I'll put gumboots on if I don't want wet feet. There are things that we can do in terms of taking precautions to protect against potential disasters that could happen in the future. So I just want to take the opportunity to really ask everybody at home, as my audience starts pouring water on each other's heads, ask you all at home, what are some of the challenges that you're facing? Are there any specific problems that you're encountering right now? Are there any huge risks that you can see looming on the horizon? Is there anything that you want to voice? Because I am sat here with a room full of some pretty magnificent minds, and we might as well ask your questions to them. So do add the questions into the chat box if you've got questions. Do share any particular problems that you might be facing. As we've talked about, it is through this communication, this collaboration, that you'll really start to find simple solutions. So thank you. I'm going to ask who's got a problem, a rainy day comment to make. Gemma, do you want to say a little something about some rainy day mindsets in social media? How about when it all goes wrong online? On the news this morning, actually, was the fact that teachers are being dreadfully bullied by students and parents on social media. Social media isn't always wonderful, is it?
No, it's not. Trolling, as that's often called, is a big problem. And I know an awful lot of teachers that are very, very careful on social media to make sure their privacy settings are set up correctly and that they're not becoming friends with their students. But even with those precautions, you will find people that will find your profile and maybe set up fake profiles with you at the centre of them. So you do have to be careful, and you do have to use things to listen to social media and watch it and monitor it to make sure that people aren't saying wrong things about you. I also deal a lot with hotels in the hotel industry, and of course they've got TripAdvisor. And TripAdvisor can be a great resource, but also people can post reviews on there that are not necessarily true. And I always tell people you do need to face that head on. You can't run and hide from it. You've got to say your side, but you still have to say it in a way that's polite, that maybe leaves the door open for conversation. And it is about what you say online as opposed to what you say privately. So if somebody has a complaint about you online, yes, face it, acknowledge it, say, I'm sorry that you feel that way, but then take it into a private email to finish resolving the issue. You can come back online later and say, oh, so glad that so-and-so is happy now with, you know, the recompense that we've made to them. But don't hide from it, because online everything's open. People will see that somebody complained and you did nothing. So it's always worth responding, definitely.
That's absolutely tremendous advice, Gemma. Gemma, where can people get hold of you online if they'd like more advice in terms of using social media to build their business?
The easiest place to find me probably is Twitter, and they can find me at @GemL.Thompson. And on my Twitter bio there is a little link to link them to every other place that I am online, because I'm pretty much everywhere. So it doesn't matter if they prefer Google Plus or Twitter or LinkedIn or Instagram or Pinterest, I'm there. I'm far too much on Pinterest, but I'm there everywhere else as well.
But right this minute, they're not necessarily going to recognise you because you're missing a vital facial hair component. For the benefit of explaining the moustache that was jumping around a few screens earlier on, and indeed a lot of your photographs that are up as your profile pictures at the moment, do you want to tell everyone a little bit about what's going on?
I've got involved in Movember. Now, a lot of you will already have heard of Movember. It's where men will grow moustaches in order to raise awareness for prostate cancer and make sure that people are getting themselves checked and raise money for it and so on as well. Now, I can't grow a moustache. I tried really hard, but it didn't work. So what I've been doing is wearing fake moustaches in embarrassing places for the last month. So I've had, today I was wearing a feathered moustache when I got here, but it's not going to stay on, so I didn't keep it on for this. I thought it would be a bit distracting.
Hold your feathers up.
Oh, hold on, I have to find them again. Hold on.
We'll come back to,
We'll
come back to Gemma when she's got her
yes,
feathers on.
if you do see pictures of me with moustaches on, it is still me, I promise. But it's been raising a few smiles as well, and certainly raising some donations.
We've got a moustache going on over there. Well done, Movember.
That's my Movember moustache today.
And here's Gemma's Movember moustache today. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. You see, we can have a little silliness in between a bit of brainstorming. We've got one last mindset to go. We're going to whiz through this because I'm really looking forward to seeing Andrew's mind map. This is the mindset of the snow. And actually the snow forces us to look at our situations from the point of view of what's essential to our survival. Now, in terms of our basic survival, we've managed, you know, throughout the ages to develop suitable equipment to help us stay alive in the snow. You know, hats and gloves became pretty integral to us being able to survive as humanity in harsh conditions, especially back in the Ice Age. So by really taking the time to look at the business or look at yourself in terms of what's essential to your basic survival, you can start to prioritise your actions slightly more clearly. Often what we think is important in the moment turns out to be not very important at all when we start to look at the bigger picture. So using this metaphor by means of effectively getting rid of the dead wood, you know, the tree sheds its leaves in the winter when it's covered in snow. It really resorts back to its core fundamental functions, what is absolutely necessary to its surviving. Well, if we can understand that, then we can start to get rid of the parts that are perhaps costly and unnecessary, and we can start to look at how we might perhaps thrive in such harsh climates. So I'd just like to ask everyone the quick question in terms of what's essential to your basic survival in terms of this. Now, I'm not talking about the breathing, eating, being able to walk around. I'm talking about the survival of a small business or indeed a large business. What's imperative to being able to survive when suddenly the world freezes around us? Who'd like to answer this question for me? Perhaps I can jump to Kane.
Biggest killer of new businesses, biggest problem weathering the storm, aside from cash flow and sales, because no business sort of went out of business because it was losing money. Businesses go out of business because they're short of cash. I guess it would be best way to equip to weather the storm, low expenses, really low expenses, and then you can weather the storm. The snow can come, you can batten down the hatches for 3 months, got no problem at all. Come out at the end of 3 months. If you've got massive overheads and the snow hits the ground, and funny enough, actually, it's something I do consider. That I've been running the British Invention Show for 12 years, and it's in late October, and I always thought that one of these years I'm going to have 3 feet of snow on the ground and no one's going to be able to come. It's going to be a really, really expensive month for me if I don't insure for it. So yeah, it's definitely, yeah, keep your expenses really battened down. Good margin of profitability, and work hard, and you've got half a chance.
And actually, that's exactly what the snow forces us to do in terms of keeping our expenses down. If you look at a tree, what does a tree do? It sheds its leaves. It gets rid of all the unnecessary parts to its basic survival, and it really refines its operation. And to listen to Jonathan Ortman's interview, because in that he talks about how in recent years almost too much attention has gone towards giving cash to startup entrepreneurs, or the need for funding in the early days, and how people starting businesses often celebrate that as being a bit of a benchmark. I've got my first round of funding as such, when in actual fact, with money in the bank, we make decisions very differently from when there isn't money. And that lack of cash forces you to think a bit more innovatively, to overcome those challenges by approaching them laterally, to really look at, making sure that you're a lean, mean survival machine, because you're not carrying all that extra weight that sometimes when there's cash floating about, you can get very complacent. You can waste an awful lot without necessarily realising it. So I guess that's what the snow does. Now, having understood how to survive, we can then, of course, start to thrive. And I'm a strong believer in the fact that it's important to have that childish sense of fun. We've all seen YouTube videos of policemen sledging down hills on snowy days, or, people who would otherwise be very sort of upright, standing, serious members of society, suddenly losing their heads a little bit in the snow. And it's important in business too that there is a degree of childish fun that comes through in what you do. So I like to use this metaphor by means of reminding us of what that is, by asking the question of, where would you throw a metaphorical snowball if you could? So let's jump to Mark and Brigitte. What really gives you that sense of childish fun in the work that you do, that keeps that passion alive? Or how important would you say it was to have? Well, quite obviously it's quite important, because they're sat there with moustaches on their faces. How important is childish fun in terms of business building, in terms of achieving your passions and dreams, Brigitte?
Very much, and a lot of people would agree that right now, in the time of recession, we are actually in that time of snow. So there are people that they go and sit in the house when there's snow, and there's other people that build snowmen, and as soon as there's the first snow, my husband and I always sort of go outside straight-faced and see who can throw the first snowball, and who actually reaches that person. So even though we've been together for more than 25 years, that's still our thing, and it probably will be forever. So I really want to encourage you all to keep that fun, even though I have clients that say at times, maybe we have nothing to eat, but then, we'll go to somebody's house and we'll say, we'll cook for you if you provide the ingredients. So really, become lateral thinkers. And I would say in that time of snow, it's your mindset and your creativity, which of course are close together, that will keep you there. And your sense of humour. Sense of humour. Keep that. Tony, do you want to add anything? What do I have to do?
Nearly. Nearly. Hey! Yeah. Look at that. We managed to work it. Quite fetching, actually. I might do this. The snow. I think in terms of snow, we talked a lot about pre-planning thinking snow's going to arrive. And that's a very good place to be, which is planning that snow will arrive so you do know what's going to go wrong. And exactly to Bridget's point, which is actually when the snow arrives, knowing what you're going to do now it has snowed, go and having a bit of fun, which is great. The other thing is that it actually snows, it is snowing for a very, very short period of time. And actually that's when people tend to batten down the hatches, when the snow is there 100% agree, which is getting out and really enjoying the snow and absolutely completely throwing yourself into it. It's the worst bit, which is the sludge. The post-euphoric piece where actually you're going to have to clear up all the mess that's now left. And what we don't often do is actually, that's the hard work piece where people lose the will. And it's the sludgy bit that people don't like, as opposed to actually either planning or enjoying yourselves. Snow, love it. Get out, get the kit.
The bit in between, yeah, absolutely.
Liam,
What do you reckon in terms of snow as the survival and then thriving within that, having learned to survive?
Well, for snow and this idea of the world freezing, I think, again, from my perspective, the key is to not freeze with it. You've got to keep momentum behind, and again it comes back to what we've all talked about in various ways today about just keeping focused on small wins, keeping things moving forward. A key part of that, linked to what's just been said there about dealing with the sludge aspect, if you like, is you need to sort of know where are your key areas and how are you going to get access to key things. That's the sort of area that you need to think about from a very practical perspective. And then in terms of the question around having fun in the sort of snow-themed idea, I think a lot of that, from my experience, is in the brand. So I have a brand that I have quite a lot of fun with. I have created a brand that sits very naturally with myself. I don't have to put on a serious voice to represent my brand. The brand has actually gained its position in our little market because it is a little bit different. In the mind mapping world, pretty much every product out there is called Map Something or Mind Something. It's a fairly dull way of thinking. We're called Bigger Play. We stick out a bit of a sore thumb, and I think that's where we have our fun is with the brand and how we sort of conduct ourselves in ways. The worst piece of advice I ever received was I needed to change the name to be more serious. I needed to change Bigger Plate to be more accessible and acceptable to corporate users. You know, if you look at the names of businesses using my website, it just isn't true. So I think if you can build a little bit of fun into the brand and have the brand act sort of natural reflection of yourself, then I think fun will naturally come through that, if you like.
Yeah. Definitely. And Malcolm, where would you throw a metaphorical snowball?
I would most probably I'd throw a snowball towards an igloo, I expect, and get a bit constructive, innovate some shelter, some storm protection, insulation, heat, and then think about heat and food.
Yeah, absolutely. Although the idea of being able to have this sense of childish fun very much comes through once we've learned to survive. You know, it's important that we learn to survive first.
Well, in that case, start modelling in that snow and make the ideal snowman and do a few characters. I don't know if you've ever been down to Brighton Beach in the snow, but it gets very, very creative.
And actually, you're bang on there, Malcolm, in terms of Brighton snow getting creative, Brighton Beach getting creative in the snow. That is one of the things that the snow mindset is particularly powerful in revealing to us. Of course, we see the footprints in the snow. We see the paths that are the first to get cleared, and these are very visible very quickly. And so this is also an opportunity for you to really look at your situation. As Liam said, it's important not to slow down. It's important not to be the one that freezes. And although it might seem as if the pace doesn't necessarily move ahead so easily, anyone that's done any off-piste skiing and had to walk up through deep snow in thick boots will know that it is exhausting just to take 4 or 5 paces. But it's in that not stopping. Even if those paces do take all day, it's moving forward. And so with the snow mindset, where we see anyone that's woken up in the morning of a snowy day and looked outside and suddenly realised that their neighbours have routines that they hadn't perhaps realised, where they, check their garden shed door every night before going to bed, and you can see that because the footsteps are out there. The snow reveals these traces of movement, and if we can start to understand these traces of movement, then we can start to shorten the journeys. We can start to restructure how we can get from A to B more efficiently, or how indeed we can actually clear that path to make sure that other people can come through too. So it gives us a good opportunity to really look at our situation in terms of where are the paths that need to be cleared first? Where are these patterns of movement emerging? And how can understanding those actually help us to prioritise our own actions? So that's one of the things that I would urge you to do, particularly when looking at optimising a business, whether that be that you're right at the very start-up stage and you haven't got the cash to build it, or you're looking at innovative ways of achieving the same outcome without necessarily having that investment in the first place, or whether you're a big established business, and more so in this instance, where the processes and procedures are in place and not necessarily working quite as efficiently as they might have been when they were originally set up, whether that be because of other growths occurred or people have changed, whatever has happened. That snow mindset gives you an opportunity to really understand where the paths need to be cleared. What thoughts have you returned to often as well? Quite often these are things which will show up as footprints on the snow. If you look at your mind map, you've maybe thought of the same thing a few times. You've reverted back to a particular idea time and time again. Well, maybe this is more important than you realised it to be. And actually that's where the snow, putting its blank canvas over everything and only showing up the things that stand out, the church steeple, the red breast of a robin, whatever it might be, blanking out the details to expose what's really important is something that's very imperative, if I can use that word, to prioritising your actions successfully, knowing what's really important rather than what you assume to be important at the moment. So do spend time considering your situation from that point of view of what's essential to my basic survival. And having learned to survive, then of course we can start to thrive. So I'm going to ask Andrew if we can jump across to the mind map to examine the mind map as it currently stands. So, see if everybody else is building up their mind maps too. Oh, Andrew, that looks great, the snow. Do you want to talk us through it a little minute?
I might say, well, we've got a wide range of topics being covered by everyone. Some people's views overlapped. We had the fun section in the snow survival overlapping with Liam wanting to have fun with his brand as well. People talked about planning, how long these things last. We want to flick back to some of the earlier
Well, I'd like to ask you actually, what is the mind mapping tool you're using there?
The one I'm using today is Mind Manager on the desktop, on the PC. Similar versions on the Mac and the iPad and on the web. Not quite as fully powered as this one. But how do businesses benefit from using mind mapping? Well, they get a different picture of things, certainly. It's not a PowerPoint presentation. It's not a series of bullet points. So this is fairly bullet pointy at the moment. But it's about creating, as individuals, you create a personal view of what you're doing, your own analysis of it, which you link into sources of information that your business has. So people can link to databases or to spreadsheets or to other documents and files, other people's folders all over the network. You can agglomerate this information onto the map. And when it's groups of people working together, they can rapidly share information to develop ideas about a project, the status of it, get an overview of what's going on. It's a powerful tool.
Yeah, bringing a huge volume of information into one central location from which different experts can all kind of use the platform to build up their areas of expertise, I guess.
Yes.
So it almost becomes a fantastic filing system, to be honest with you. Anyone that's brain doesn't work in lines, as mine is not particularly good at doing, we'll see how you can attach things to these links. Often you can attach files, you can attach hyperlinks, you can almost use it as a framework with which to navigate around your own infrastructure in greater depth. So I love a lot of these mind mapping platforms. I don't necessarily endorse or support any one particular one, but I do think that they are worth bringing in more to business. But enough of my waffles and thoughts. Let's jump to the very last part of the global brainstorming exercise using this weather forecast tool. Because the final part of the weather forecast is, of course, the weather report. And so often when we're making decisions, we actually strive to reach a conclusive black or white, yes or no, should we move forward in this direction or in that direction? And I like to think of it being more a process of divination, a process of understanding a little bit more, learning a little bit by mistakes, refining the course of action, and starting to navigate, chart a way forward. So the weather report, the final part of the exercise, actually asks us to step into this role of the weather reporter. This isn't necessarily the best weather reporter we've ever had on the television, but it was a little piece of fun, so I hope I'm not offending anybody by including this in my presentation. What I'm actually asking you to do in this instance is to step back from your map, to detach yourself from being the cartographer, the person that's actually drawn out the map, or indeed the explorer, the person moving through this map that you've drawn and experiencing things every day, to adopting the role of the reporter, whereby it's not the reporter's job to control the information, it's the reporter's job to communicate the information to yourself or indeed to the viewing audience, as is the case with the weather reporter at home. They take an objective look. They don't change the fact that the wind's coming from here or the wind's coming from there. They simply tell us that's what's happening. And so this is your chance now to look at your mind map and to observe it, to report on it, and really to list out some tangible actions, some small baby steps that you can start to move forward easily, achievably, without losing sight of that big vision, but without necessarily focusing on that as being where you really want to go. So that basically concludes our brainstorming exercise. We can take a look at the map. I will certainly be sending out the map to anybody who would like to see it. No doubt Andrew will upload it somewhere for us to be able to see, and then you'll be able to get his contact details too, should you ever need a mind mapping guru to turn up at one of your events, because it can really consolidate the whole afternoon onto one very easily accessible, achievable, openable and shareable document. So we will be publishing the results. I do hope you take the time to objectively stand back from your situation to be able to report back on it. And before we disappear completely, I'm going to ask a few people in the room here to give me their honest opinion of what's just happened in the last couple of days, last couple of hours, to report on this global brainstorm weather forecast as they see it. Gemma, would you like to report on this situation as you see it?
Gosh, there's so much to take in. I'm not sure I've fully formulated my report yet. I do think that reporting is a vital thing to do. I frequently recommend to my customers that they have things in place where they can look and see where their customers have come from. But for me, with this situation, over the next couple of days, I'm going to be creating several more mind maps and several more lists. I do mind map on a daily basis, but I'll be starting to go online and do it now and share mine online so everyone can see my to-do list. And then I have to do it, don't I? So it can be an aid to productivity that way. I think also that a networking opportunity here that everybody's got out of this, meeting other like-minded people again, is something that I will definitely take away with me. And I've met some fantastic people here that I will be keeping in touch with, if they don't mind me being mustachioed for the rest of the month. And I think, yes, learning about dreaming big, that was certainly a section that was very inspiring to me. But of course, battening down the hatches in the snow and still having fun with it. So all in all, there's an awful lot to think about, and I will be keeping on thinking about it and talking about it for goodness knows how long. So thank you for inviting me and letting me attend this event.
Fantastic. Thank you for being here, Gemma. Very, very useful advice and insight, and a wonderful mind to have amongst us. So thank you. Liam, anything you'd like to report on in conclusion of this weather forecast?
Yes, definitely. I guess I should try and show you what I've been trying to create as we've gone along.
Oh, wow.
So I've had a little bit of practice.
Beautiful.
So yeah, my sort of report in terms of what I've got on my map as I sketched out my own pictures. For me, what I've been saying all day. So my report for myself is I obviously do think momentum is key. I think I've always thought also, and others here have confirmed it, that learning from other people is a really important part of being a leader in business. And also there's a bit that maybe I'm not so good at all the time, and I'm sure others sometimes forget to do this, which is enjoying the here and now of starting, running a business, actually enjoying the people you're getting to meet in these sort of quite random things that come together. For me, the process we've gone through today sits beautifully, actually, in a mind map format. One of the most popular types of map on Bigger Plate are maps that replicate the De Bono hats. And I think actually I feel a bit similar to you, Celia, actually, that I tend to forget which hat is which, and I don't really wear hats that often, so it's not a very relevant sort of metaphor for me. However, I experience the weather all the time. I think it's a really useful way of coming at the same situation from different angles, and I think it sits very nicely as a map. So I'm hoping, and I'm sure we will see some examples popping up on Bigger Plate now where people are creating this, using this approach in a map format.
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. It just makes it much more intuitive, and you can kind of begin to start to use the metaphors to blend them as well. You know, we all know what it's like. We can be thinking very sunny one moment and a cloud can come across our skyline. It's nice to keep those disciplines in the thinking, to use the time to actually sit down and have a structured brainstorming session. We've allowed a lot of the mindsets to drift here. I do offer a fast and furious 15-minute trial typhoon, as I call it, the whirlwind of brainstorms, that literally allows you to kind of sit there and run through, and under the constraint of time, your situation. And of course, when we put time pressure on the situation, we actually find that we don't have enough time to have those worrying thoughts, so that, oh, here's a thought, oh no, I can't do that, cause, you know, that's the double take on it. That initial gut thought can sometimes be very enlightening, and when time becomes a pressure, you don't have a chance to stop and worry about the rest of it. You just get it down on your mind map and then step back and look at it afterwards. So Liam, thank you for saying that, and I do seriously hope that we see some weather forecast maps appearing on Bigger Plate. I look forward to seeing them, is all I can say. If anyone wants to have a bit more information about the weather forecast, about how they can use it, then yes, my book has published today. Brigitte Sumner just looked across at me and said I'd bought a copy of it. So thank you for doing that. Anybody that wants to just needs to click the link, see if I can point to the right side. Ooh, wrong side, that side of the camera, just up there. Ooh, push there. There's a little button to buy the book on Amazon. It is currently on special offer. It's normally double the price, and I've just knocked it down 50% for the benefit of the Global Brainstorm today. So thank you. Let me ask a few more people about reporting then. Mark, your report on as a result of having taken part in this exercise?
Sure. Here, I can hear me now probably. I think really for me it's any tool that helps people see more about what they're trying to do, and to understand not just themselves but what's going on around them is invaluable. You know, entrepreneurs are walking usually in a strange place. It's all new. It's uncharted in many ways. All of those analogies. So the more that they can understand what they're dealing with, the better. What I like about this is it really is a very quick and clearly very effective way of really getting a picture very, very rapidly. That is something that gives them some degree of confidence, a sense of knowing, and sometimes knowing the truths about what's round the corner that isn't maybe what you want is a good thing too. And one of the things I would add is that rather like the weather. Tomorrow it will be different to today. It may be worse, it may be better, it may be sunny, it may be rainy, but it will be different. So however bad or depressed you might feel today with whatever you're facing, it's going to be a different problem. So can we win? But interestingly, I was just looking for a survey, but there was one I saw in the last week where entrepreneurs were asked, in terms of some of their motivations, and one of the questions was how bad could it get, and they really weren't too worried about how bad it got. Now you could say that's resilience, foolhardiness, all sorts of other things, but it's having that courage to go forward. I think it's a great tool, and certainly it's something we've certainly talked about having as a regular tool as part of IdeaSpace Global when we take that live.
Most certainly, and I really appreciated what you said then, Mark, about change is pretty much being the only certainty that there is out there. And just because this has kind of turned into the Celia Gates show, I'm allowed to share one last point of view of mine. We waste far too much time managing time. People never talk about managing centimetres or managing pounds and kilos, unless of course they're on a diet of some sort. But this idea of managing time, time's the measure of change. If we start to measure change instead of time, then we can actually make the most out of the time by accelerating it, by shortening it, by bringing change about slightly more efficiently. So thank you for sharing that. I will jump on to Brigitte and Tony by means of anything that they've got to say with regards to weather reporting, the report at the end of this session. Do share your view.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yes, what you said just there is very interesting because, of course, we can't manage time. Time just walks away. It will do its own thing. We can only manage ourselves. And I think today has shown again how important that is, and very much also how important it is to have the power of team. To be here together with all of you and all of you is just a show again that so often as entrepreneurs we think and we feel that we have to do it all ourselves on our own, whereas we all have our strengths and our non-strengths, and to put it mildly, so just have someone else in your team and really find out and see how much fun that becomes, because definitely I've really found it a lot of fun. So thank you very much for inviting me, and keep the great work going. And all of you, just keep being an entrepreneur because it is rewarding. Just keep it going and just watch the weather.
From my perspective, the reporter, one of the things we ask for a lot from companies who come in here is a one-pager. And they always ask the question, what should be on the one page? And we actually ask for them to give a report, much like you're asking. And we ask them to report on two things, which is, what do you know that I don't? And who do you know that I don't? Because that's the only thing that matters. There is no point in telling me that tomorrow is going to change. We all know that. We all know from the weather forecast that it might rain, it might not rain. You've got to tell me something different. So tell me what you don't know. And if your report don't tell me what I don't know, I ain't going to read it. Just to your other point, I actually have a company that measures time. and it measures time to a nanosecond.
And does that ever change? Does time sometimes measure less and sometimes measure more?
Time continually changes.
Oh, wow.
It continually jumps.
Well, we might have a whole new webinar about this.
This year, did you know you had a nanosecond jump when you changed over at midnight?
I did actually know that.
There you go.
Yes, I noticed it most profoundly. I do also know that my feet look slightly younger than the top of my head, and I have considered walking around upside down.
We're going.
That aside, does anyone else have anything left to say before we draw this final weather report to a close? I think thank you all very much for getting involved in this exercise. It's been a little bit of a social experiment, a chance to understand how this tool can be used to really engage with what I like to refer to as the collective conscious. I think there's lots of policymakers, there's lots of organisations, there's lots of people out there desperately trying to support entrepreneurs, trying to help new businesses emerge, trying to help people get onto that journey of making jobs, as Mark was talking about, or generating ideas that solve some of our world's problems, and they don't necessarily know how to. So it's interesting just to spend the time with some people who do know how to, who are doing so every day, to really engage and bring those ideas together and to allow you at home to participate in this lateral thinking tool too. So I will look forward to sharing the results with you, which I'll do over the next few days, and I thank you all very profoundly for coming and taking part in this Global Brainstorm 2012, the first of many. Thank you.
Thank you.